the timer for public comment, but public comment is, yeah. For each question. Interesting. Uh-huh.
Kind of stuck on I-4.
Yeah, what's going on I-4? They wouldn't let me have access.
Accident.
Don't go there.
I think there's an accident. If you're coming from 92, you're in trouble.
Yeah, I was watching.
And then if you go to Orlando, forget it. So, now, walk off the edge there for the president's visit tonight. You doing all right?
Yeah.
Very good. I have,
I talk all the time.
I have a friend whose daughter works for that. I can't remember who it was. So, but they hired her. She has a degree in technology as well. And they hired her to revitalize their subscription because they too are going through a lot of things that all newsletters. And so she's in charge of getting them out there with media, digital media. So they're doing a good job recently. But I think they're like Apple's fine. Yeah, that's right. That's true. But I was like, let you know. That's neat. So you never know where you will go. You never know.
Sometimes my editor's like, someone for like, he's saying, don't believe me. That's what he's trying to say. Yeah, he's trying to get out of like, yeah, and especially when you have to move around to get the rains, you have to like switch jobs really.
I said that went to Tampa a year or two ago.
Oh, no, he went to work for,
Step Up for Students, we got some Tampa.
yeah,
And when Erin was here, I said, oh, we went to the dark side. So I thought it was cool. Thanks. Enjoy your day.
Thank you.
Is there anything I can do for you, Denise?
But I can.
No. I'll let you concentrate.
Well, fine, ma'am, how are you today? How was yours? He's my last one. You've already been at my level.
Did you realize what you signed?
Yeah,
$2.5 million sign-on bonus. Company car.
Oh, he's doing pretty good. A little shaky, a little shaky.
She said you had to.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. She was talking to school.
Oh.
I think you probably listen, ask her if I do the bus power.
It's kind of not gonna be here. Oh. Oh, what's happening?
Nothing yet.
Oh.
Trying to figure out how to set the recorder.
I wanna make sure I.
Oh, she's asking you to set something up?
Yeah, to run it to the speaker.
Oh, you mean she's stuck for that long?
How much is it?
She didn't answer. No, because she
you guys get Connie to stop by and bring some bagels?
Yeah.
You're always hungry, Ty.
It's a gray area. That's an interesting check.
Ruben, you made it. I thought you'd be stuck on I-4.
What's on I-4?
The accident, the whole I-4 is all shut down. Connie can't get here. I couldn't get on I-4. I couldn't get on I-4. They blocked me.
Carl here? Not yet.
Both from I-95 and from 92.
I come from the other side. I'm in Deltona, so
You don't come down I-4?
I take 1792.
Oh, 1792.
I worked. I went to work this morning for a little while. So
Oh, really?
I went to work this morning for a little while, so it was just down there.
Okay, we can, that's fine, you can let me know.
Well, they, obviously do what they're used to.
They're gonna be 3 minutes.
Yeah, they do
Yes,
that.
please, they asked to do that, and it will start, you have a copy of that script that we just made copies of, or no?
No,
Alright,
Karen can, she can run up and get us.
okay, so if you, in fact, we have them over here, if you wanna just take one each.
Well, there's only 15, so, oh, you mean in the.
You could take it and get the,
Okay.
Well, you are getting
but
paid
you'll
for
see,
this, so it makes sense.
Carl is gonna give the candidate 3 minutes for an opening statement.
Okay.
And then, as soon as that's done, it says on the little script, round 1 questions, and there's 5 questions, each one of those 5 questions. When the person starts to ask the question, you start the timer, because it's 3 minutes per question. And then there's round 2
How's Dave?
questions, round 3
Oh,
questions.
there are a lot of haters.
And then he will give them 3 minutes for some concluding statements, and then we'll say peace out.
My part is in the opening and the concluding.
We didn't account for that. We don't have time for that.
Okay, I've never done this, so bear with me, so.
You'll be fine.
Okay, but I mean, if I give you the look.
That's
Give me a
okay.
second, so.
I'll look up here.
Okay.
Would you feel more comfortable if I sat like next to you during the first session?
I think I'm okay.
Okay.
If
If you
I
do, just give me the look and I'll walk over.
Okay, so I'll go get.
I'll be in the front row over here.
Okay. Two extra.
Well, there's always gonna be the.
You look like you're almost ready there, Good morning. You're almost ready. Look at you. She's like, what am I doing?
If I give you the look, it's like, give me a minute.
You've got all the minutes you want. Ida's not here yet.
All day.
So I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah. I wonder if she comes down I-4.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We're getting ready to get our meeting started. This is our meeting to interview the three finalists for the interim superintendent position that we will be hiring at the end of the day today. So it's a big day here in Volusia County Schools. And I will announce that all of our staff, all of our school board members are present. And we're going to begin with our first candidate, which will be Mr. Tim Huth. And Mr. Tim Huth is the first candidate because he's the first one that applied for the position. So that's the order in which we will be interviewing them.
Do you want me to go get him?
He is on his way.
Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Huth.
Good morning.
Nice to see you.
Good to see you too.
Apologize for the little bit of a late start this morning. We had, as you know, there was an accident on I-4 this morning, and the road was closed, and it's causing a lot of issues. So I appreciate you waiting for us to get started. We want to thank you for getting here. We know you didn't find out until yesterday that you were a finalist, so we appreciate you being able to come here in such short notice. We're on a rather tight time schedule, but we're still going to stick to our 1 hour of interview time frame, and have a little 15-minute break after each interview. Would like to give each of the candidates up to 3 minutes for an opening statement. So, Mr. Huth, if you're ready, we are ready, and you may begin.
I would like to thank the board members for allowing me to be here today to interview for the interim superintendent's position for Volusia County Schools. As my resume indicates, I've had over 36 years of successful opportunities in Volusia County Schools, from teacher to school-based administrator to district administrator. Some things that, just want to bring to the table is the fact that I have been married for 47 years to my wife, Charmaine, and you'll see this is a family affair for us, Volusia County Schools. She just retired in November from Hinson Middle School after being the school secretary there. And prior to that, she was the school secretary at Seabreeze High School. And he had a wonderful experience at all her schools that she's been at. Both of my children, adult children, were educated in Volusia County Schools. My daughter graduated from Mainland High, my son from Seabreeze High School. And in fact, he's a teacher. He got into the teaching profession. He's a high school social studies teacher at a high school in the Bronx. So from Seabreeze to the Bronx is quite a travel for him. Volusia County Schools has been a family affair for myself and my family. I am passionate about this school district. The interim superintendent position is most important for our community. I do not view this as a caretaker position until the board identifies the next superintendent. Too many important decisions will take place between now and your appointment of the next superintendent that I know I can make tough decisions to lead this school system and meet the needs of this school board. My experience in Volusia County has been varied, as I mentioned. My focus has been on whatever we do, whatever discussions are made, they must be made in the best interest of the students, because that's why we're here. You were elected to lead the school system, to help our students, and we, school-based district employees, schools center around the students. As Deputy Superintendent for Operations and Government Affairs, it was a focus on the students. As Area Superintendent, I had for several years, it was the Port Orange, New Smyrna, Edgewater, Deltona, and DeBerry schools that I supervised. So I had experience in many locations on an intimate basis with the principals of those schools, staff, and related programs at those schools to support them. Once again, focusing in on the students at each of those schools that were there. Prior to that, I was principal at Mainland High School, and it gave me a lot of opportunities to be the instructional leader to help our students graduate and be successful. Prior to that, as it says in the resume, I know you've read this, but I just want to bring out a few things, is that I started my career as the principal administrative career at Holly Hill Junior High, the last year of junior high, and then I moved to stay there as the principal of Holly Hill Middle School. So I have two distinctions there, the last and the first, which I really enjoy, and I bring that up from time to time. Also, for 13 years, a classroom teacher in various subjects, and once again, student learning was my primary focus. Athletic coach, focused on goals at the high school level for these kids, and one thing that all of the students I interacted with is, if you set goals, you work hard, you can reach those goals. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Huth. And now we're going to begin our questioning. And the way this is going to work is we're going to go around the dais, and each of us has questions to ask, and we're asking each of the candidates the same questions. And looks like I begin with the first question here. So, Mr. Huth, could you tell us what do you believe are the top 3 critical issues facing Volusia County schools?
Well, I think the implementation of the new IT software system is very important for everyone, from the district to the school-based and the students. We also have the implementation and follow-through on the instructional materials at the elementary level for the new adoption of the textbooks that are there. And then there are many other things, but a continued effort in the area of school safety. We know that we have legislative issues that have come down related to that over the last couple of years, but I think that there's the next iteration of that needs to be addressed throughout the school year, and that's the Guardian/SRO programs to the hard security fencing at our schools, et cetera. So I would say those are 3 that we need to continue to have a successful opening of the school year and make sure they're on track to be addressed.
Thank you. Okay. And Ms. Cuthbert.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
What strategies would you use to raise the academic achievement of the lowest quartile students district-wide? And please describe an area where you have been successful in closing the achievement gap.
You know, identification, using data for the students of the lower quartile is most important. Having that, and then working with the curriculum division at the district level to make sure we provide staff development, training, and any kind of programs that are necessary to reach those students. I know that in the past, when I was a school-based administrator, we did exactly that. We targeted the lower quartile of our schools, of our students, and then we provided with them computer labs, which was a brand new item back when I was principal at Mainland High School, but we used the computer labs to improve on their math scores, and then we also used funding directed at those so that we can lower the achievement, to lower the class size ratio for the students that needed the most help. A also unique feature that I was able to put in place at that time, which was innovative at the high school level, is we had our first reading coaches. And the reading coaches that we have now in all of our schools, funded by different mechanisms, are a thing that grew out of some of those efforts that we took place. And at that time, it was a different state assessment system when I was principal, but our lower quartile not only improved, they were able to get their high school diplomas because they were able to pass those portions of the exams.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Wright.
Good morning.
Good morning.
What is your vision for financial reporting, transparency, and maintaining the public trust of the financial affairs of Volusia County?
You know, transparency for school districts with public funds is most important. If the finances are not in order, then there's going to be issues that'll come up that we as a board, we as a district do not need to face. Fortunately, I've had responsibilities in the budget department and finance. When the one CFO resigned, it was about in February, I was asked to assume those responsibilities and bring the budget to the board for the adoption in September. And working with the folks like Stephanie Weaver in Budget and Finance, Bertie Trewick as well, and the others, we were able to bring that to life. But to get back to your question, you know, we have communications that are a must. You as board members need to have the data and information about what has taken place with our funding from the state. FTE, one of the areas that I have a tremendous amount of strength in is the understanding the funding formula, including the DCD, which we're starting to see a little bit of movement there with a review that's taking place. And so we have a responsibility to all of our stakeholders to present that on multiple occasions to the board and to the public, and be ready to answer those questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Cologne.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Describe what you believe to be the ideal working relationship with a school board. How is this ideal relationship achieved and maintained? And should you have an adversarial situation with a school board member, how would you resolve it?
You know, clear communication is a must. Individual meetings with board members to understand the avenue by which you want to receive information is most important to be understood. If you prefer it through a phone conversation, face-to-face, emails, texts, or all of the above, that's the type of information that board members would need to share with the interim superintendent so that we can go ahead and move forward on getting the information that's requested and then answer any questions related to that. I know that there are things that each of you have a strength in and want to improve upon, so the superintendent would need to make sure that those type of communication items are understood, and so that we can work together on that. I also understand you don't want information overload, but we want to get to the facts that help you to understand, be able to respond to your community about what's going on in the school district or what's the direction of curriculum, program, financing, et cetera. So individual meetings, phone conversations, emails and texts, and then your individual preferences on all of the above.
And there was one last part. So should you have an adversarial situation with a school board member, how would you resolve it?
Well, one of the things you have to do is get it out on the table. I mean, you cannot let this thing fester and have a misunderstanding that's out there. Collaboration and discussion is most important on that. I can say that over my 36 years, there were times when you had discussions that you felt one way, a person felt another way, but ultimately, you as the elected official on school board policies and decision, that's in your arena. And so those are the directions that I would go to make sure that we together work so that it doesn't become an adversarial position.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Ms. Haynes.
Good
Morning.
morning. Briefly describe your leadership style and in more detail specifically address your approach to holding staff accountable.
You know, I had an open door policy of both school-based and at the district. I enjoyed working with people. I believe in understanding the people, understanding their skill sets, and then matching that to the effort that we need to make. I'm looking at being a collaborative leader, one that can get results through teamwork. I'm a firm believer if we all work together, no matter what area you're in, we need to work together to make that happen. My leadership style is one of leading. After I receive data and information from teachers, staff, district leaders, then there has to be a decision that's going to be made. And I'm very comfortable in making those decisions. I've done that over time. And so that's something that is part of my DNA, so to speak. And I'm looking forward to reestablishing those relationships with individuals here and making sure that they know where I'm coming from, and through communications, much like I told Mr. Cologne, is that through conversations, meetings, emails, texts, coming together, we're going to do the best things for our kids.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And now, Mr. Huth, we're beginning round two, and so we start with a different person each
Okay.
time. And so now, Ms. Wright has the first question.
Volusia's budget is impacted by student cost calculation compared to some of the districts that may receive more funding per student. How do you ensure the appropriate resource allocation within the district?
Over the years, Volusia County Schools has been on the short end of the funding formula primarily since 2000. And at that time, when they had the funding formula shift and added a amenities factor or a wage factor, Volusia County Schools has been at a deficit as compared to surrounding counties or counties of like size around the state of Florida. I know when Senator Jim King worked hard to reestablish the new DCD, I was in Tallahassee as the district lobbyist, working with him, identifying the impact on Volusia County Schools. And to that end, it still was a sore point for Volusia County Schools because we lost, as you all know, millions of dollars over the years that like districts have enjoyed. So, but back to your question on the responsibilities and what we have to do within the budget. I mentioned before to Ms. Haynes about teamwork. One of the things that when we've had budget deficits in the past, and this is not new, we worked to identify areas that we could save money, reduce costs, and still provide quality education for our students. And to give you an example of a couple of those things, at the district level, when I was deputy superintendent, I had various department heads and divisions that I worked with, transportation being one. In that area there, we were able to analyze a thing such as fuel costs. And in that area, you wouldn't think that we would have a tremendous amount of savings, but when we analyzed the spot market for gas and fuel and locking in on a price for the whole year, we used that data analysis to make a decision to stay on the spot market, and we projected that we saved that year over $500,000 in fuel costs, which went into the general budget. And so that was one area that it came up. Another one that was more close to home at the school base, and those that were administrators at that time, particularly the principals, knew we had a number of assistant principals at the schools that were on a 12-month contract. And we looked at that job role and responsibilities, and we moved them, 30 of them, to 11 months. And there was a cost savings there that went back to the general fund so that we could fund programs for the students that were out at schools. When that happened, in my role, I met with all 30 individually, explained the reasons for the reduction, talked to them about what their impact is on their salary, their benefits, and then when they left there, they knew exactly what status that they were in because it's very personal. They are committed to our schools, and they wanted to do what's best there. But those were some examples of things that we had to do to cost contain for the budget.
Thank you. Mr. Colon.
How important is it, and what specific roles have you played personally in dealing with the legislature, Department of Education, Department of Justice, or any other regulatory agency?
You know, as the district lobbyist for 15 years, I dealt very closely with those in Tallahassee and even some in Washington, D.C. on the Federal Relations Network. So my relationship with legislators was very close. I presented the school board's agenda to our local delegation, but then also in the state of Florida in Tallahassee. And I met with key leaders on a daily basis in Tallahassee during the session, but also during the preparation weeks ahead of time to make sure that they knew the impact of some of their legislation that was taking place. I will say this, I had a very good reputation in Tallahassee to the point that you've heard of maybe FEL, Florida Education Legislative Lobbyists. It's the lobbyist group for the state. I was state president for 2 years of that organization. And during that time and before and after, I had worked with the appropriations chair in the Senate and House, the leaders in the House on all the education committees as well as the Senate. and work with them on what the impact of Volusia County School would be. Worked with the state. When they passed the charter school legislation, we went out and attacked it and presented a charter district. And Volusia County was the first charter district, which freed us of rules and regulations. And I took it with Dr. Caldwell, Chris Caldwell, to the state board and the Governor Bush at the time. And we were able to get that approved, which helped us with some of our freedom of rules and regulations. So my comfort level in dealing with those areas is great. There have been times when I've had as the person that oversaw the Professional Standards Committee, where we would deal with those in the different government agencies that were looking at our programs related to student safety and any kind of potential lawsuits that were out there as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Haynes?
What are the most important factors to consider in the summer before a new school year begins, and how do you address them?
You know, the most important part of the school year is the 180 days with the kids. And I always used to tell them, as the principal of the school, I have a sense of urgency that your impact during the school year on the 180 is going to be so important. We need you here to do your best job every day. Now, at the district level, we knew to get off to a good start, we needed to have a sense of urgency as well, making sure that we put in place all of the processes, procedures necessary to support the schools so that they get off to a good start. So, you know, we talked about the textbook adoption. I did for this coming year at the elementary level. Well, that means warehouse and purchasing has to have that completed, delivered, and make sure that they're in place for the start of the school year. That's on us. That's the district. We have to have the personnel hiring the people. We need the teachers in place, and the goal would be 100% when those doors open. Not long-term subs, not long-term vacancies, but ones that would address the individuals in the classroom so that we can get off to a good start. Because once again, as I mentioned at the very beginning, I'm about the kids. And I know what it's like to have an open position for the students, and we want to make sure that they're taken care of. So at the district level, personnel, all those procedures to get in place so that we support the schools that are out there. And then, of course, we'll have attached to that any budget needs that need to address what the school needs are.
What do you see as Volusia County School District's most unique or valuable or, let's say, undeveloped feature that you would capitalize on, and how would you go about utilizing it?
You know, I think the collaboration between the schools from the east side, west side, north, south is an asset. I look at that as a resource. I know that when we come together on addressing a need, by the teamwork I identified, and you'll hear this theme a little bit because I'm a firm believer in utilizing the power of the individuals that we have here. And by utilizing their strengths, I think we can accomplish very much. And I think that's underutilized. I'd like to see us move to an environment where the collaboration at each of the levels is right there. You know, our principals, they do a good job, but they need to have individuals that they can talk to each and every day that may be other principals themselves at the high school level or middle school level. So I would make sure that they understood where I'm coming from as far as each of us working together. I think as far as a valuable district, I'll tell you what, there have been times when we have been the leader in the state in every area, and we're moving in that direction again. And I know that this is something that is going to happen. Once again, it's leadership and setting the vision, setting the direction, and then having the superintendent and the staff get out there and work hard to make this happen.
Thank you. Ms. Cuthbert.
Hello again. One of our ongoing goals is to increase the enrollment of traditional underrepresented student groups. So what success have you had in moving these underrepresented students into these higher performing classes?
You know, I had a really great experience, and it was through a team of individuals. When I was, and I'm using the Mainland experience, the Holly Hill, because those are cogent examples of things that have happened. When I was at Mainland, the assistant principal, Patsy Graham, was there, and we looked at, during the summer, to get back to Ms. Haynes' comment, what did you do in the summer? But in the summer, we looked at every incoming 8th grader and 9th grader's student folder, academic progress. And we identified those that had been into non-traditional advanced classes. And we started to say, let's move this student who has the characteristics of success into these programs. And the students that we tracked, which was almost 100 students, that we moved into advanced honors or to a track that included algebra that these kids would never move into if you didn't identify them. And after the first 9 weeks, we tracked them again to see what were their successes. And 33% of the students who would have been locked into low-level classes, for lack of a better word, received A's and B's. We had another third that was C or D, which I thought was outstanding. So 66% of the students ended up successful in a more rigorous curriculum. And those that didn't have success, we looked to analyze what data they had, and then we worked on those for the next year so that we could continue with that. So there's one example of looking at, and we can do that in a system-wide way by working again with the principals and saying this is a very important issue for our district, and we can track ways that we can do that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. We're just moving right along here. All right, we're on round 3, and this time begins with Ms. Haynes.
If you could point to one program or process that you have implemented that best represents your goals as an educator, what would you share?
You know, to limit it to one is a challenge, but with my theme being student success, I would say that one of the things that you just experienced recently were high school graduations. And that's a culmination of our students in Volusia County, many of which started in kindergarten, ended up walking across that stage. And you saw the enthusiasm of the students and the parents at those graduation ceremonies that resonated throughout the auditoriums, whether it was at Stetson Auditorium or at the Ocean Center. And it was a thrill for me when I was a middle school principal, moved to Mainland, which was a feeder school, to be with students who I had as 6th graders all the way through when they graduated from high school. And to see them walk across the stage, to know them personally, know their parents, to see the successes, challenges, and track that they were going to take, and providing opportunities, some of which were in, Ms. Cuthbert, the group that I just mentioned to you were in the lower quartile when we moved up, and now to see them that they're on track for post-secondary education, vocational training, or the services was the most rewarding part to me because, once again, I'm all about students.
Thank you.
Thank you. What is the single most important thing a superintendent does, and why?
Model the behavior that this board and community expects. I believe, Mr. Persis, that the superintendent needs to be an advocate for public school, needs to be the person that is going to be seen as the leader of public schools, needs to be one that is viewed as a person that can understand the different community needs, from the business community to the parents community to the elected officials community. And to be that person that can model this board's direction vision and to make sure that you are the one that is looked upon as the best cheerleader and instructional leader for this area.
Thank you. Ms. Cuthbert.
Tell us about an academic or an instructional program that has failed. Why did it fail, and what did you do about it?
I'd like to think I never had a program that failed, but that's an excellent question.
Or maybe it didn't work out to the best of your
Right,
expectations.
I got
How's
you.
that?
Thank you. Let's see here. You know, I'm one that always look at taking a program, identifying what the need was, and then putting together the direction that needs to make things happen. I guess one of the areas is not actually school-based. It is the one that was in the legislative session, where when they had come up with some of the changes in testing and moving the bar from year to year. And we allocated resources and curriculum programs in Volusia County schools to address what we thought was lower quartile, what we thought would be the means necessary to move our district to an A district. And when it changed from year to year, even though I had very good, solid relationships with educational leaders on the committees, I mean the legislators on the education committee, it was not one that was accomplished, and it seems as if that thinking is continuing on, where they keep changing the rules and regulations and the bar. And so personally, I think that was one that I felt very frustrated about.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Wright.
Mr. Huth, explain what you've learned in your years of experience with budgeting. What budget practices have been most effective for you and why?
One of the ones that I know was very effective, and it was very time-consuming, was that when we would staff the schools, it was based on your numbers, your FTEs, your full-time equivalencies, the number of students at each school. And then we'd have a formula by which allocation of staff would take place. Then inside of that were programs, Title I programs, special education programs, requests from the schools to develop a new program, and we look to staff those within the budget constraints. One of the things that I did was bring all of the department heads attached to the schools, meaning like curriculum, those in special programs, vocational, and ESE, Title I, et cetera, along with the area superintendents, along with budget and finance, meaning Stephanie Weaver and Michelle Golden from Title I, together, and we sat around the table, went every school in this district, every school, how much they were allocated, why they were allocated, what special needs, what support was necessary within the budget constraint based on FTE and program dollars that were out there. But I'll tell you what that did. The area superintendents got a better education about the entire district. And I think if you know what's happening in the entire district, all of us can rush to the needs of our district when things happen that are out there. All of the program folks that were at the meeting, vocational, Title I, ESE, they got a better understanding instead of being siloed into a school where they were familiar with. And like I said, we would start early in the morning, go late in the afternoon the next day, but once that was done, everyone could walk out of there and explain to a principal why they got something and why they didn't get something. And it was a team collective effort that was out there.
Thank you.
Mr. Cologne.
All right. What will teachers' organizations which you have worked with tell us about you? What will the support organizations tell us? What will the district and school administrators say?
You know, I was on the union negotiating team for 15 years and representing the board on the directions that we had with the union. And I would believe that they would say I would be fair, I would be communicative, and explain things in great details. And I think that they would support that. I know in addition to that, there were times when I was the hearing office for the different level 1, level 2, or level 3 offenses that would come, or grievances that might come my way. Not offenses, but grievances. And I would look at it with a very impartial view and come to the best resolution and explain why. So I would hope that the answer from our teacher, support staff, all those that I've come in with, contact with over the year, that I was fair and consistent with working with them. It was interesting, I was meeting with Mr. Vogel, that's helping on this committee, and Mr. Riker, and Ms. Messina from the Florida School Boards Association. And one of the things I was sharing with them is when the 3 finalists were identified, my phone blew up from teachers currently, from retired teachers, from staff members, from district folks, from other individuals. Good luck, appreciate it, all these type of good comments that were out there. So to answer your question, I believe that it would be positive.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, we have been doing so good that we are at the 9:15 mark, and we have been through our rounds. Board members, this is an opportunity for you if you would like to ask an additional question. I think we have time to do so. And while you are thinking of your question, let me ask you, Mr. Huth, would you have any hesitation, I guess is the best word here to use, and I know you're an honest man, and just be frank about it, but as you know, we're in a situation right now where the superintendent will be here through the end of the month, and we would like for you, if you were the one chosen, to work with our superintendent for the last few days or so. Tell me about your feeling about that and what you would hope to gain from that.
You know, that transition is out there, and I am available to work with the superintendent. I know the superintendent from many years of being at the district level and school-based level, so it would be beneficial if there would be some time there together to get the current status from that perspective, from his perspective, of where we are with things that we got to get ready for the school year, or where we are with personnel, programs, implementation of the technology programs. I could get all that information in my first weeks of meetings from department heads and chiefs, but to have that perspective, I think would be positive. I would be available to do that. I have, as you can imagine, I don't know if you took a little bit of look at my community involvement, it's pretty extensive. And I stayed connected to our community after I left the school district. And I do have a few things that are there, one of which is on a Thursday at 4 o'clock on the 27th. I'm the chair of the Checker Flag Committee at the Speedway, which is a volunteer group with the Speedway, and we have the races coming up. And so as chair, I have 70 individuals that we go through assignments and work out things to move sponsors and teams and all that stuff around. So that's about my only hour that I have committed that I would need to review. But I would be available, no doubt about it.
Okay, fair enough. Is there a board member who'd like to add? Yes, Ms. Cuthbert.
As a fellow retiree from Volusia County Schools, where every day is a Saturday, how would you, or it's supposed to be anyway, going back to this fast-paced schedule you would have, how would you be able to handle phone calls, committees, emails, just the emails coming out the kazoo? So how would you be able to handle that race that you have?
I appreciate that, and that is a recognition, but my wife always told me, you're not retired. The things that I do, and I mentioned my community involvement, I get those emails and stuff, and I can jump back into that fast pace right away. I have no problem with that. I'm ready to go, morning, noon, and night. It's not an issue. Currently now, as I said, I get numerous emails. I got them today, but in the past. But I know it's different when you're in that role. I was in that role, so I got those all the time. But one of my strengths is my time management. You know, when I was in Tallahassee, I still had my responsibilities as Deputy Superintendent for Operations. So when I was up there and we had the fires in '98, I was responsible for the shelters. So I came back here to make sure that the shelters were running. During the hurricanes, was here for the shelters. Time management is a strength of mine, and so I have no problem with that. You know, I'm connected to this district in other ways. You may have saw that I'm a Futures Foundation board member. And I'm one that is raising funds and advocating for the school district so we can continue to do great things. So, yes, I do know that every day is a Saturday, but I never accepted that role. Volunteer in the school system, assist at the, Bill Dunnigan is the principal of Hinson Middle School, and my grandson goes to school there 3 days a week. I'm in the cafeteria helping with supervision there because I look at that as a classroom, and I get a chance to get back with the kids because I love that. And get to know those kids that are there and participate in their lives, and it's great. And then after that, my grandson, who's 11, I was his baseball coach. I'm his flag football coach, basketball. He's in a golf camp now, but he's on a golf team. So I'm there with him. So like I'm saying, I'm involved all the way, and I see myself ready to hit the ground running here as interim superintendent.
Can I follow up on that?
Well, let's see if anyone else has a question, okay? Because of time. If there's more time. Anybody else have a question? No? No. Go ahead, Ms. Cuthbert.
Well, what you were saying about your grandson, involvement with your family, how will they feel with all you being dragged back into the school district? I mean, will they miss you? Will your grandson miss you?
Well, of course they'll miss me, but I also involved them. When I was deputy superintendent and when I was, we were raising our grandson at that time. And so he would come to events with me.
Okay.
Right now, I don't know if you noticed that, on Friday night, I'm the play-by-play announcer for the Friday football games on WNDB. So I bring him to the games. He puts the headsets on, sits next to me. But you know what's great about that experience is I have the mic, and I talk about the school district. If you listen to any of those programs, you'll hear me talk about the great things happen. I never get into anything that would be considered negative, both on the field with the kids or off the field. But I allow the principals before the game. I'll meet with Melissa Carr and talk about the things at the Land High so I can get it on the radio. Or Carolyn Carbonell at Deltona High School, get it on the radio. Or all these schools that come into play. And then during the pregame, the halftime show, and afterwards, we're promoting Volusia County schools, public schools that are out there. So they'll be fine. And I didn't go into this without the blessing of my wife because she is a rock-hard supporter of me, but she also just retired so she can help with Joey, my grandson, take care of business out there too.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Well, at this time then, Mr. Huth, we want to give you an opportunity to give any closing comments, so go right ahead. And also, if you had any questions for the board, this would be your time to ask.
Well, let me do the question first.
Sure.
In this interim role, you know, you mentioned questions that led to responses that I gave back, but what do you also see as an important factor for this interim superintendent position from your point of view?
Who'd like to go first? I think we all have a point of view on this, but I would just say, from what I've heard from our board, we want this transition to be smooth. We don't want any hiccups. The most important thing is the start of school. I particularly liked your comment about ideally having 100% staff hired and ready to go. I think that would be very beneficial. We also understand that there are some tough decisions that need to be made. And we know they need to be made in a timely manner. And so that, again, so that schools can operate efficiently, smoothly. Those are the main things that we are looking for, the collaborative arrangement that you'll have with our senior staff. That's one of the things that perhaps we haven't asked you, but I'm not sure when you were the deputy superintendent how often you had meetings with your senior staff, so you may want to address that, because I'm sure senior staff, regardless of who the person is that comes in, they're wondering how will this new person affect me and my job.
Yeah, my comfort level is to have weekly meetings and others individually as necessary, because when we meet as a superintendent staff or cabinet, by cabinet I mean those that would be maybe the folks in special education, Title I, directors of program, that we are all together and looking at the task in front of us and then collectively working that out. So for the staff, it would be weekly meetings or individual as necessary, and then as a cabinet, weekly as necessary. And then there's times when we meet ahead of time to prepare the board agenda. So we have agenda conferences where you have staff around as well. And then after that's completed, if there's any kind of follow-up needed to address ongoing issues, then we have time to do that.
Okay. And you can continue with your closing statement.
Okay. First of all, when this opportunity came up, I was excited. And if you don't have excitement from the individual coming in, then, you know, I don't know what can happen or be accomplished. It would be an honor and privilege for me to serve as the interim superintendent for the students, the staff, the parents, the community for Volusia County Schools. I am confident in my leadership skills to lead our team at all levels and to reach the goals set by this school board. As I said at the beginning, this position is not a caretaker position. This is one that is very important and needs to make tough decisions and address the needs for the next however many months it is. And I feel that I am that person. I can do the job, and I'm ready to assume those responsibilities and start to work this afternoon.
Well, we thank you again for your interest. We thank you for being here. We thank you for all of your service that you have given to the Volusia County Schools. Just so that you know and that we are clear, I'll be saying this to every candidate that comes in. The board will have a special meeting today at 2 o'clock, and at that time we will discuss all of the candidates and vote. So by the end of the day, we certainly will have selected our next superintendent, and you will get a phone call, but I got a feeling you'll be listening, so what do you think? Yeah, I think so. But however, you will be getting an official phone call. We'll be calling all the candidates either way. Thank you again.
Okay.
Thank you.
All very much.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
And we're on a 15-minute break.
He went to a leadership and vision program at Yale University where he learned all about business entrepreneurship.
Business and getting ideas out there and what the process is into getting into that. My number one takeaway was marketing it and getting it out there for those, and really the main way to start is what is really needed in the world. Just seeing my work out there just makes me happy, and just see how good of a job I've done or how I feel I've done wants me to keep going and striving to be the best I can be.
So let's give them a warm welcome and a good round of applause. I'm going to race the Advent Health car this weekend in the class race at Daytona. My nerves are a little high of the questions that you might ask, because I know the questions that my kids ask in this situation.
What type of foods do you eat leading up to the race?
It's super hot inside the car, and the races are really long. So how you fuel your body can make a huge difference in the outcome of your race and how you feel during the race. Hydration is one of the hardest things for us in getting enough water in. I drink water basically 100% of my day.
At that age, you're so young that if you can learn the proper way to eat and the proper way to exercise, and then you live your life that way, it's much easier than if it gets out of control and 10 years down the line, then you're trying to get it back. So if you can teach someone at this age the importance of nutrition and exercise, it's just makes your life so much easier.
Students are coming up saying, is there a NASCAR driver coming? Is someone coming today? Like, who is it? Who's coming? So even students that aren't into NASCAR are saying things like, I'm not into driving, but I'm so excited. Like, I see that over and over again, and it's really just hysterical, because I feel so fortunate and overjoyed to have this opportunity.
My name's Taylor Duguay. I work at the United Way at Volusia-Flagler counties as our impact and marketing strategist. I think the most influential teacher I ever had was Mrs. Linda Cuthbert, who now of course sits on our school board. She really helped me figure out what I wanted to do in life, especially in politics and caring for our community. She told me one time, if you don't like something, change it. And that really set me on my path to where I am today, and why I'm still in Volusia County and why I work in nonprofit.
Oh man, I think I was pretty nerdy. It's usually what runs through my mind when I look back at my high school stuff.
I got a very high quality education through Volusia County schools. I know that the reason I can stand in front of a group of 500 people and speak clearly and get my point across is because of the skills I started developing in 6th grade with my speech class. My path in life that I've developed is because of those relationships I made through Volusia County schools and that connection I built. County schools really did prepare me for my job now and for my career, which involved a lot of writing, communication, critical thinking, public speaking, interpersonal skills that really I developed through Volusia County schools.
know he has helped hundreds of students. He has helped hundreds of students get scholarships, and he has worked to change lives. And that is why he is Volusia County's Teacher of the Year.
It's a humbling thing to be chosen as Teacher of the Year. I do get to share, what we're doing here at Taylor in the AVID program and at Taylor in general, and speak for publication. I do get to do that, and I really want to, but the reason that I'm being honored for this is because my students did what I asked them to. That's really all it was. And, I see some of my seniors here in the front, and I really haven't thought too much about this because they are working on scholarships this week and all those sorts of things. So I really want to, all this accolade, whether you believe I'm saying it or not, I mean it. This is about you guys because you guys put me here. So thank you.
Teachers, they have a very difficult job, and sometimes, they don't get recognized enough. It's something we can do to give back, to the teacher and to the schools for what they do. The tournament, Mitsubishi Kia and Diamond Motors are able to be here presenting this car for the Teacher of the Year to drive for the year.
Donation to 23 schools, and our team that works in our materials unit is so fabulous about helping us make sure that it gets distributed in the cars. We're happy to help the schools in our community provide clinical help to our students.
Means the world to us because we get an opportunity to help with boo-boos that happen during the day, and it just makes it a lot more easier for our nurse, and so we can care for our students.
Hi, my name is Adrian Avram. I went to Blue Lake Elementary, DeLand Middle, and Mainland High School. I was a very shy kid. So Blue Lake really helped me break out of that shell and be more vocal and interact better with people. They had the Academy of Multimedia Technology where they did graphics design and networking, and that's what really pulled me into my career choice now. My teachers would always tell me that anything is possible as long as I put my mind to it and didn't give up. I could achieve it. I just had to keep working towards it and not giving up when things got hard. I have a 4-year-old son who is currently going to Indian River, and I have a 2-year-old daughter who will be following shortly behind him. I think of no better place for my kids to receive a superior 21st century education.
I'm Chandler Powers. I'm a student at University High School, and I'm also a young entrepreneur. The beginning process is the most important process, which is planning what you're going to do onto the canvas, and from there, it helps you understand what you're going to do. These 9/11 cleats, they're brave. The reason is what I used. The brave stands for those who fought for us and helped us through these tragedy times, and the reason is the reason we are alive today.
Academics are very important to him, and the amazing thing is I never even have to tell him to do homework. It just makes me proud that he knows the priorities in life and he has no problem getting them all done. He went to a leadership and vision program at Yale University where he learned all about business entrepreneurship.
I felt that it was a great opportunity to meet new people and get to know what the meaning is behind business and getting ideas out there and what the process is into getting into that. My number one takeaway was marketing it and getting it out there for those, and really the main way to start is what is really needed in the world. Just seeing my work out there just makes me happy, and just see how good of a job I've done or how I feel I've done wants me to keep going and striving to be the best I can be.
So let's give him a warm welcome and a good round of applause. I'm going to race the Advent Health car this weekend in the class race at Daytona. My nerves are a little high of the questions that you might ask, because I know the questions that my kids ask in this situation.
What type of foods do you eat leading up to the race?
It's super hot inside the car, and the races are really long. So how you fuel your body can make a huge difference in the outcome of your race and how you feel during the race. Hydration is one of the hardest things for us in getting enough water in. I drink water basically 100% of my day.
At that age, you're so young that if you can learn the proper way to eat and the proper way to exercise, and then you live your life that way, it's much easier than if it gets out of control and 10 years down the line, then you're trying to get it back. So if you can teach someone at this age the importance of nutrition and exercise, it just makes your life so much easier.
Students are coming up saying, is there a NASCAR driver coming? Is someone coming today? Like, who is it? Who's coming? So even students that aren't into NASCAR are saying things like, I'm not into driving, but I'm so excited. Like, I see that over and over again, and it's really just hysterical because I feel so fortunate and overjoyed to have this opportunity.
My name's Taylor Duguay. I work at the United Way at Volusia Flagler Counties as our impact and marketing strategist. I think the most influential teacher I ever had was Mrs. Linda Cuthbert, who now of course sits on our school board. She really helped me figure out what I wanted to do in life, especially in politics and for our community. She told me one time, if you don't like something, change it. And that really set me on my path to where I am today and why I'm still in Volusia County and why I work in nonprofit.
Oh man, I think I was pretty nerdy. It's usually what runs through my mind when I look back at my high school stuff.
I got a very high quality education through Volusia County schools. I know that the reason I can stand in front of a group of 500 people and speak clearly and get my point across is because of the skills I started developing in 6th grade with my speech class. My path in life that I've developed is because of those relationships I made through Volusia County schools and that connection I built. So Volusia County schools really did prepare me for my job now and for my career, which involves a lot of writing, communication, critical thinking, public speaking, interpersonal skills that really I developed through Volusia County schools.
know he has helped hundreds of students. He has helped hundreds of students get scholarships, and he has worked to change lives. And that is why he is Volusia County's Teacher of the Year.
It's a humbling thing to be chosen as Teacher of the Year. I do get to share, what we're doing here at Taylor in the AVID program and at Taylor in general, and speak for publication. I do get to do that. I really want to, but the reason that I'm being honored for this is because my students did what I asked them to. That's really all.
We can bring in the next candidate here.
So she went to Newsom, Murrah.
Too sad.
Spruce Creek High. Spruce Creek.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. All right, we are back in session. We are interviewing our second candidate for the position of interim superintendent with Volusia County Schools. Our candidate is Tim Egner, and so happy that you're here. We know this was very short notice, so we thank you for whatever plans you had for today, that you changed them and were able to join us. I would like to introduce to you, since you do not know us, and Connie Spire is our agency clerk. Jamie Haynes is a school board member from District 1. Ida Wright is our vice chair, school board member from District 2. Linda Cuthbert is our school board member from District 3, and Ruben Colon, school board member from District 5. And Ted Doran is our school board attorney. My name is Carl Persis, and we know each other from back in the day when we were both principals at the same time, Volusia County Schools.
Yes, sir.
So great to see you. And again, glad that you are here. We have allocated about an hour for this. And we'd like to give you the opportunity to give us an opening statement,
Certainly.
and you can take up to 3 minutes. So
Okay. Well, I timed it for 4, so when the gong goes off, I'll save comments till the end.
That's okay. The hook will come out.
It's wonderful to be here. I feel very comfortable in this position. I've given many presentations at this very table in this very room, and it's been like old home week to see so many people that I know and see such quality leadership that still works in this district. Let me begin by saying what an honor it is to be one of the 3 educators participating in the interview today. I think it's a tribute to the reputation of Volusia County Schools that in a week's time period, very short notice, you had a long list of highly qualified applicants. And again, I can only say that I'm truly honored to be one of the 3 that enjoy the interview today. I think the board is in an enviable position in that you can't make a bad decision. So I think that's a great place to be for you. Whatever you decide, I think it's going to be good for this district. I also believe that I'm the best fit for that position here and now, today, in the life of this district. And I hope by the end of this process, you will agree with that opinion. So at this time, I'm going to make some statements that I hope will help you fine-tune your thinking about the candidates and let you know who I am and what I am. I'm very transparent. I work very hard to communicate specific expectations in a way that are actionable. That's the way I've always operated, and I think it has helped in producing student achievement at the highest levels, both in this district and also in other districts, and working internationally with International Baccalaureate in several positions. I see offering my services as a duty to this district, for which I care deeply. A district I served in various positions, both school-based and district level, for almost 29 years. I also married and raised my family here, and everyone in my family graduated from Volusia County Schools. So I know the system, I know the culture, I know the potential and I know the good qualities that exist today. Just as importantly, and perhaps more importantly in these circumstances, I also had significant and meaningful experiences in leadership, management, administration, and curriculum, serving and learning in other very high-performing environments, both at the national and international level and in St. Johns County schools. I am fortunate to have had experiences that enable me to bring a wealth of relevant knowledge, accomplishments, and fresh perspectives that I think are even needed in the interim job. An interim superintendent cannot be a placeholder. You have to move forward with the agenda that you have. You have to make needed changes that need to occur now. But at the same time, in an atmosphere of great change, the district does not need new initiatives. The degree of stress that can occur with these major changes is something that has to be addressed, and I think a de-stressed environment would very much further the goals of this district. Was
Thank
that
you.
the 3 minutes?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
It
and
goes
I have
by fast.
Other comments that I'll make at the end if given
You'll-
the opportunity.
You will have more
Thank you.
opportunities, yes, for sure. So what we're going to do, Mr. Egner, we're going to go around the horn here, if you will. Each of us we have about 3 rounds of questions, and I'm going to start with the first question, and that is, what are the top 3 critical issues facing Volusia County schools, and how do you see your role and timeline in addressing these issues?
Thank you for asking that. The 3 that I think I would identify, and I won't put these in a particular order because
Right.
I think they're all 3 critical. One is finance. I think that any time that there's been some question or some lack of clarity in what was happening with finance, it impacts the confidence of all stakeholders, especially the board. So I believe that getting the finances in order is extremely important. And I know school finance is kind of this mysterious, highly regulated, very difficult thing to sort out, especially for a layperson. You have to be an expert, really, to be able to dig deep and understand all the criteria. But at the end of the day, there's one indisputable fact. The money you're talking about, the money the district has, you're going to spend between 83, 84 to 87% on staffing. That means everything else, it has to be done with that 10 to 13 to 14% that's left over. So if you lose the perspective that you're only working with 14% and you're not careful with quality control and position control and things of that nature, you can't correct the situation. So I think I come with from a background that had the most stringent quality control in the budget that I think is imaginable. Some of the ideas would work here, some would not, just because of the culture. But I do think that I'm in a position to be able to address that immediately in a manner that could right the ship. I did see the budget presentation of previous board meeting, and I think that we're very much headed in the right direction. And so I think that'll be leveled out. I think the ship will right on that in very short order, one way or another. I think another issue is staffing and hiring. Florida is experiencing a teacher shortage, and the best of the best counties, no matter how high they're ranked, are experiencing shortages, especially in critical areas, science and math, but really everywhere now. And so there has to be a more streamlined process for recruitment and hiring. There has to be support after someone enters the market. Quite frankly, an awful lot of new teachers leave within the first 5 years or even sooner. And so I think it is essential for the health and future of the district that we make sure that we have the processes in place and the supports in place that can ensure that we have critical positions filled by the best and the brightest and the most capable and caring teachers available. And that takes work, and it doesn't happen by accident. Probably the other factor which is unique to this situation right now is, have I gone over?
Go ahead.
again?
Go ahead
Sure.
and finish.
Okay. I think another factor, and I've alluded to it already, is that I do think the system is stressed by the degree of change that's taking place and the rapidness of that change. And change is inevitable. However, I think that in any district, especially a big district getting larger and also with great diversity and large numbers of schools, you have to prioritize very carefully what you're going to, in essence, put all your work into. And other new initiatives need to wait. They probably can't be implemented properly. They may not be able to be funded. They may not be sustainable. So it is essential that whatever you do with a focus on student learning and achievement. The mission is student learning. So all things must rally around that as the priority. And then using that as your metric for prioritizing what you do next, then you choose carefully the initiatives you're going to push within a time frame and make sure they're fully funded and sustainable.
Okay, Ms. Cuthbert
Well,
has the
that
next
will tie right in with what I have to ask, sir. Good morning.
Good morning.
What strategies would you use to raise student academic achievement, especially in that lowest quartile? Describe an area in which you've been successful in closing this achievement gap.
Thank you so much. And I think that, and I don't want to sound, like a postcard or something you've read from an education journal, but you cannot teacher-proof a classroom. And one of the issues that I think can be overemphasized is research about various methodologies, models, and plans without giving due consideration to the qualities of a particular system and the kids that are in it. So I think you have to customize the approach. In other words, if there was one right answer, everybody would already be doing it. So you truly have to get with teachers and work with them collaboratively to make any kind of progress. Now, leaving that generality to be more specific, I think it is critical that the teachers that are engaged have a commitment to viewing education as a formative process. And one of the things I think that has been overemphasized is the summative nature of exams and assessments and things of that nature, without realizing that the formative process is the most important. And by that I mean very specifically, you have quality instruction using best practices for which teachers have been given adequate in-service. They implement that and they monitor themselves very carefully. They then collaborate on the discussion of the results and agree as a team in a professional learning environment style what needs to happen next. And that may mean that two of your colleagues did this better than you did, and so they help with your students. You share students. You own them collectively. And then you move forward with another bit of information which is formatively assessed, and that doesn't mean a paper pencil test. That could be an interview, it could be any number of methodologies that are used, a writing sample. You have to hit it from a broad spectrum. And then with each small step, you celebrate that student's success. The reality is that you're not going to take every student who may have been a reluctant learner, a non-learner, a disinterested learner, and change their attitude overnight. But if these students do not have success experiences on a routine basis, on a regularly scheduled 9-week period, they will not make progress. They will not feel like this is a place for them. They will not feel like the teacher cares. They will feel like a number and a test result. And so we have to make every student feel successful, even if it's an inch at a time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Our next question will come from Ms. Wright.
Good morning.
Good morning.
What is your vision for financial reporting, transparency, and maintaining public trust in the financial affairs of Volusia County?
Well, I will give a specific example from my experience in St. Johns County, which has won awards for its transparency, particularly in regard to its website. there's a little green button that you can go to our website and click on, and you can basically see every check that's ever been written. And so when I think there's a process by which people often talk about transparency, but living transparency is much more difficult, but it's worth it, because you have to have the confidence of all stakeholders, especially taxpayers, that their money is being used wisely and that they know why and how it's being used. So in addition to the fact that I would make all records that can be made public and easily accessible, as we try to do in St. Johns County, I also think it's very important, and I know you do this to some degree, I just think I'm an advocate of it, and that is having community involvement with committees who watchdog. In other words, if I tell you I need $500,000 to implement iReady, then that's what the $500,000 needs to be spent on. And if anyone asks about it, I need to be able to show proof. And if there's a community committee that's been established to watchdog expenditures in certain areas, they need to be reported to and receive feedback, and we need to listen. So the other thing I mentioned is that I have worked in environments where position control and budget control were taken to a degree that I had never experienced before in any other organization. To be specific, and I know my time's limited, but when a principal received their budget, where I've worked before, there are a table full of district leaders, sometimes including the superintendent, always including department chairman, sat with that principal and walked through every position, and then had a discussion with that principal, who needs to be the CEO of their building, to discuss what they might trade off, what they could do and what they couldn't do. So there was an iron ring around the parameters of spending in all departments, including the schools, but within that ring, there was tremendous autonomy. So I believe that is the perspective I would bring to Volusia County, is that we have to admit that we're only working with 10 to 15% of a budget that's discretionary. And that 10 or 15%, we have to set an iron ring of a parameter that cannot be violated. And within that ring, we have to talk to each other.
Thank you. Mr. Clune has the next question.
Good morning. Describe what you believe would be an ideal working relationship with a school board. How is this relationship achieved and maintained? Should you have an adversarial situation with a school board member, how would you resolve it?
Thank you. That's actually 3 questions, but I bet I don't get 3 times the time.
You are correct in that.
First of all, you will find me to always be direct but civil. And I think the most important thing, and I've learned this in several organizations, that if you cannot establish trust, the war is lost. If today, and if I walk out of here today, and you don't feel like you can trust me, you don't feel like Tim is someone you could trust, then you don't need to hire me. So it is extremely important that we establish trust with each other. We have to be very careful about sunshine laws. However, I will communicate with any of you as individuals more than you want to be communicated with, as evidenced by my opening statement. I tend to over-communicate, ask anybody. I also tend to lecture, so you have to tell me to stop. But the point is, I think that we would need to establish trust. The relationship the board, I believe, should have with the superintendent, at least in the districts I've worked with where there was the greatest student success, was one in which the superintendent recognized that they were the day-to-day operations person. They had to inspire the system. They had to bring on stakeholders. They had to make sure that everybody understood the mission. But the board established policy and direction, and both sides had to respect that. So a superintendent can't go off on their own, on their own mission or their own tact and leave the board behind. By same token, the board needs to respect that the superintendent is responsible for the daily hiring, management of the system. And then if they're not performing, hold them responsible. I mean, that's your job. You owe the electorate the fact to shepherd this very carefully. So I will tell you how I like to be led, and that's the relationship I'd like to have. I like to be able to trust the people with whom I work, and I want them to trust me. I want them to set very clear objectives. I can't give you what you want if I don't know what you want. And if it's fuzzy, then it leaves room for error and misunderstandings and mistakes that should not happen. So I'd want you to be very specific in what you think I should be doing, at least the direction and what you feel is appropriate outcomes. Then I need to be given some space to work. Trust that I know what I'm doing, and I've done it before, and I can make sure kids learn. I can hire, I can build teams. Trust me to have that space to do my job, but you have to give me frequent feedback. I am not defensive. I take criticism very well, but I like to have a voice. So if you came to me with an issue, you were talking about a conflict, and said, Tim, yeah, I just don't like the way this is working out, this isn't right. I would like you to give me the opportunity to explain why the situation is as it is, what our options are, and then we can have an honest discussion about how to move forward. And you're my boss, so at some point along the way, you have the advantage. But I hope you would respect and trust me enough and my background enough that you would listen even if we disagree.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Haynes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Briefly describe your leadership style and in more detail specifically address your approach to holding staff accountable.
Thank you very much, and I think I may have already done that a little bit, but I'll be more specific. First of all, the superintendent's job is massive. It encompasses so many things that, I can't tell you the correct pipe fitting in the new building. So a superintendent has to bring together a team that has expertise in their areas. And then that superintendent has to trust those individuals to do their job. So there's nothing more important than hiring and having the right people and the right structure and the right organization. At the same time that you have to hire well, you also have to train up. And a former superintendent I worked for used to say in very simple terms, it was like a three-legged milk stool, if anybody remembers what that would look like in this day and age. The one was hire the best, train them up, and if it's not working, then you offer them the opportunity to leave. There is no great margin to carry people. There is no great margin to accept incompetency. Even good intended people are sometimes not up to the job. And so it's not personal, but our mission is critical. And so my view is that you do your best to bring on the best people, you trust them to do their work, you give them space to work, you listen to them, you work with them. Then if you see a deficit, you give them time to train and learn, depending upon the level of concern that you have. Then if that doesn't work, then they need to be exited because we owe it to students.
All right, we are on round two, and we begin now with Ms. Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Volusia's budget is impacted by student cost calculations compared to some other districts.
Ms. Wright, you guys bring that mic up. Yeah.
Okay. Volusia's budget is impacted by student cost calculations compared to other districts that may receive higher per student funding. How do you ensure appropriate resources are allocated within the district?
That's an excellent question. By the way, that question has been around for 30 years in Volusia. I remember addressing this a long time ago because the cost differential somehow calculated in the value of having a beach and why people would work here even for less money. Not much has changed with that. I will tell you that that in the current legislative session, and by the way, that's one of the key characteristics, I think, whether you hire me or someone else, is Florida is complicated, and you need someone who is current. The current legislative session was not as massive as the past few years, but there's still very many changes that have to be monitored today because most of these changes come into law July 1st. One of those is that there will be a committee that's working on the formulas statewide and how those formulas are calculated. They are to report back to the state October 1st. So between now and then, that committee is supposed to be making contact with local districts, local stakeholders, and discussing how the formula can be changed, modified, made more fair, and also the characteristics of that particular area which impact negatively that cost differential. So I think an immediate answer to your question is we would have to learn the details of that study that's taking place, and we would have to do our best to present evidence of the unfairness of the current formulas, but not just complain. And I think that's one of the big issues that does not earn us respect sometimes with the legislature or other bodies we work with, is it's not enough to complain. You have to have a solution. You have to have meaningful ways that, hey, I'm not going to tell you that this is broken and whine about it. I'm going to offer you realistic solutions on how to fix it. So I would want to work with my team and the community to discuss realistic suggestions that we could give to this research body, and then hope that in October they listen to us. Beyond that, I'm an optimist, so I'm going to say it's going to get better. But we have to be constantly vigilant, and I do think we have to pay attention to what happens in Tallahassee. And by being informed and trying to offer influence where influence can be felt, that is a constant job of a district and a superintendent.
Thank you.
Mr. Colon.
All right, so piggybacking off of that, how important is it and what specific roles have you played personally in dealing with your legislature, Department of Education, Department of Justice, or any other regulatory agency?
Well, again, I'll think of several examples, and I don't want to reveal any confidential information, so I don't mean to talk in glittering generalities, but I can't give details. I've been the point person on more than one federal investigation and went through the entire process, taking several months, gathering evidence, writing narratives, etc., meeting with the investigators. Each one of those that I dealt with turned out successfully, but not just because of me, it was because, in truth, we were on the right side. So it was just a matter of proving it, demonstrating it, and getting beyond the complaint. So I have had personal experience with leading those in the past in a different environment, not in Volusia. What was one of the other areas?
So legislature, Department of Education, Department of Justice, or any other regulatory agency?
My relationship with the legislature, when I was part of the Florida League of IB Schools, which I've had significant experience with the organization locally, nationally, and internationally, I was one of a group who would go and lobby the legislature. I use the word lobby, I know it's loaded, but in truth, that's what you do. And the lobbying process I like to use is to educate. So we tried to reach out to key legislators and educate them on the issues so that they could make good decisions with legislation. In addition to that, in my role in another district, I have been asked to come and testify before committees, legislative committees. One specific example, because specifics are important, is a few years ago, there was massive changes in how dual enrollment funding was done. It was at a great disadvantage to districts at the time. It was bad legislation. And I was part of a delegation who spoke to a Senate committee, Education Committee, about what was wrong with that, but more importantly, how to fix it. And actually, I enjoyed the process, and I was given a great deal of respect. In fact, one of the references said that unlike many of the people he had spoken, I gave specifics, and they finally understood the problem. Now, it wasn't because of me, but I think I contributed to the fact that that legislation improved the next year. I think there was enough synergy there that it did help with the process. So I have been engaged rather significantly and in detail. Ironically, I'm going to mention it because Tim was here. And by the way, I did not listen to Tim's interview because I didn't think it would be ethical. I think every candidate should be hearing the questions for the first time. So, but I know Tim very well. He took me to lobby, you might say, at the legislature when I worked here before, and we were actually working with changes in driver's education. So that's the length of time I've been dealing with these type of issues.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Haynes.
What are the most important factors to consider in the summer before a new school year begins, and how do you address them?
Well, I think there's two areas that jump out at you immediately, and probably a third that comes in just behind that. One is hiring. Like I said, you cannot teacher-proof a classroom. You cannot settle. And so hiring has to be set up in such a way that it's expeditious, efficient, and you don't lose people because they can't get hired. You know, all these teachers probably have 3 offers. And so if you get a chance at them, you've got to grab them, guide them through it, make it easy, make it as easy as possible and still legal, and make sure those desks, when those students fill those desks, they have a quality teacher in front of them. So I think hiring is critical. Second, you have to look at facilities and make sure that your facilities are in good order, safe, operational. You have to make sure the emergency plans are in place and everybody understands them. Especially if you're doing renovation or new buildings, and in St. Johns County, I got to tell you, we're building 2 schools a year. So it's critical that you have the timing right, and schools can open when they need to open, and they open ready for the students and not in a state of disrepair that could be unsafe. The third thing is, I think it's very important to make sure that you've implemented the legislative changes for that year. As I've said, they often come July 1st, and it's easy because of the massive amount of responsibilities that have to be taken care of in the summer, that they could be overlooked. So you need to make sure your policies are updated. The board is fully informed of what has to change. Your student progression plan, of which I used to write part of the plan here when I was here before in a district position, and have been primarily in charge of it in St. Johns County, to make sure your student progression plan, parent guide, and other documents, website publications are fully updated with the most current information. For example, there's a new graduation option. If you don't know about that and you don't publicize it and you don't make sure people understand it, how many people would take advantage of it? And so I think those things are critical. There's a million other aspects to this, but I think that's where I'd settle to answer your question right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. What do you see as Volusia County School District's most unique, valuable, or let's say undeveloped feature that you think you'd want to capitalize on, and how would you go about utilizing it?
Well, I don't think we've tapped the full potential of the quality staff that we have here today. I know a lot of the people who are still here. I know a lot of the people who've left or retired. And I remember a dedication, a sense of commitment to student learning that was unparalleled. And so I think we have quality people in place, and I think we have a pool of talent. I think now what we need to do is make sure that we have the training, processes, attitude, and inspiration in place that enables those people to reach their full potential and to show the leadership of which they're capable. I think the teaching staff is in a state now to where they feel that there's so much change coming at them, it's like a tidal wave. Our teachers, and when I say our teachers, I mean Volusia County teachers, are outstanding. I still know many of them. I worked with hundreds while I was a principal for 12 years, and I marveled at what they did, and sometimes with very little support. That's about attitude. It's about inspiration. It's about feeling good about your job each day, and it's about de-stressing an environment. And I think right now the teachers are feeling the stress with all the changes. I do believe that interim superintendent has a responsibility to come in and say, okay, these are the things in path that we have to make sure get done, but no new initiatives, and let's talk together, sit down together, and see how we can improve what we have with the people we have, because the people of Volusia County are that asset you referenced, Carl.
Thank you. Ms. Cuthbert.
Thanks. One of our ongoing goals is to increase the enrollment of traditionally underrepresented student groups into higher level programs and courses. What success have you had in achieving this goal? What was done and what were results?
I will give you a specific example which won't be completely applicable to Volusia County, but it answers your question. When I went to St. Johns County, which has been an A-rated county ever since they started giving grades, and has a reputation of tremendous student achievement, usually 20 points above the state average in almost everything. People would say, well, it's just because of the demographics. And demographics do play a part. Poverty does play a part, and you have to be honest about that, address it head on. But also policies play a part, and leadership plays a part, and teacher quality plays a part. So one specific example is the district had very traditional policies about who could get into advanced coursework. There was a lot of criteria that you had to meet. I used to joke and say, you can't get into an advanced class unless you can already teach it. Well, that discourages any student who's been from a disadvantaged background. They can never get there. So my perspective is you do not start that in high school. You build the capacity of students to achieve, and you have to focus on elementary. Usually a student coming out of third grade, you can predict whether they're going to be an AP, IB, honors student after they leave third grade. And that doesn't change unless someone changes it. So it is critically important that the aspiration level of students at elementary and their education, their performance, be a focus. And that those kids then, when they go to a transition year between 5th and 6th, that great attention is paid to their total profile. Not just one test score, not just one grade, but their total profile to find potential. And then make sure they are not blocked from an opportunity to take at least one advanced course, and maybe that advanced course is in the arts. But why would you disqualify a student, from taking one course because they didn't do well on a math test? It doesn't make sense. So we lined that out, and what I can tell you is we have had phenomenal increases in level 3 participation by all students because of the changes, not just in the policy, but in the attitude of the teachers and the principals who are working with the kids. They were dedicated to not just giving somebody something, but rather building somebody, maybe an inch at a time, where if they weren't ready by 5th grade, maybe they would be by 7th grade, so that the doors would be, more doors would be open than closed. And some of that is policy decision, some of it is actionable.
Thank you.
Okay, we're moving on to round 3, and we begin now with Ms. Haynes.
If you could point to one program or process that you have implemented that best represents your goals as an educator, what would you share?
Well, I could, do you want a current activity, or do you want me to reach back to something I did in Volusia County?
It's your choice.
Okay. I'd like to talk about 2, but I know there's not a lot of time. Probably, I would say that to encapsulate some of this, the IB program at Spruce Creek High School was something that I didn't even want when the principal came to me about it. I said, I'm having enough trouble getting performance in AP courses. And thank goodness the principal said, put on your big boy pants, man up a little bit, Tim, make this work. And sometimes you have to do that as a leader with those with whom you work. And so I did, and I fully devoted myself to that. I believe that I put together a team. We did the in-service. We recruited the teachers. We talked to the families. We did everything possible to build the framework, to set the stage, to plow the ground, as it were, to produce student success. And we weren't just looking for students that didn't need help or they were already A++. We thought a solid C student should be able to participate in the gold standard of college preparatory programs. So through the interaction of listening and collaborating with teachers and giving them the space to grow and supporting them, I think that program ended up being a phenomenal success. And I felt very comfortable with leaving that with a team of teachers. I actually was the first coordinator of the program in an administrative position, so I had dual jobs. I think that's an example from Volusia. I don't have time to give you a full example from other experiences, but I will say the process I discussed about having formative review of kids along the way at all grade levels, analyzing the data from those formative experiences, changing instruction to where you responded to what the kids needed with your instruction. That's another thing I've been very much engaged in implementing that's had very positive results. But it's a detailed discussion, and I'll have it with you sometime later, I hope.
Thank you.
What is the most important thing a superintendent does? And why? Why do you think so?
Okay. I don't want to speak in glittering generalities, so I'm going to tell you I really mean this. That is establish trust among all stakeholders. The districts that work best have a unified school board who are unified around a common theme, and that is student learning. Student learning does mean high achievement, but it also means every student learning. They're not going to learn at the same pace, at the same time, or to the same degree, but you have to make sure every student is making progress to their greatest capacity. So you unify behind that concept. Everything that you do, and you have to do everything well. I mean, you have to make sure the plumbing works. You have to make sure kids are safe. But schools don't exist to establish minimum security babysitting activities. They exist for students to learn. So we all have to focus on that as the primary task. To make any inroads into that, you have to make sure you're trusted. People have to believe you're committed. They have to believe you're there for the right reason. They have to believe you don't have another agenda. The board has to believe that. And if you can establish that atmosphere of trust, good things will happen. So I believe that one of the things I could do, especially in the interim position, is be the honest broker who comes in. I don't have a lot of political baggage. I don't have another agenda. All I want to do is do this job well for however long it takes for you to unify around your candidate for a permanent position. And to do that effectively, I have to demonstrate that I am competent to the task, all the tasks that are involved, and I have to establish trust. If I could come here and in a few months have stakeholders trusting each other, talking to each other, being honest with each other, being civil with each other, I will have done the permanent superintendent a great favor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cuthbert.
Okay. Mr. Egner, please tell us about an academic or an instructional project or program that you've been involved with but did not succeed. Why did it fail, and what did you do about it?
Well, I can give you a really specific example, and I think perhaps you were in the audience when I spoke about this at a state meeting. But it's one of my great disappointments, but I understand what happened and how it happened. In St. Johns County, I believe very strongly, as you've already heard, in a formative process of learning that allows kids to progress at a reasonable pace, and teachers are committed to retake remediation and doing what they can in a reasonable way, understanding the workload of teachers, to make sure kids progress. Towards that end, we had established quarter formative assessments, which were commonly developed by teams of teachers and then administered by the teachers at the schools. The data, we didn't say how it could be graded or it should be graded. We just wanted the district data. Then we'd gather the data, bring the teachers back in from those subject areas, review the data, and talk about the instructional implications. I thought this was working famously, and we were seeing progress made everywhere. Unfortunately, at the time I was working with this and the team was working with this, it was also the time when there was a tremendous kind of mania about the amount of testing that was going on. Now, that testing that people were concerned about was required summative exams and how much time it was taking and what it was doing to the classroom. However, the formative process got caught up in that argument. So I feel very strongly that we ask teachers to work in PLC situations, professional learning communities. I think we all need to do that too. So I very strongly try to implement programs where I bring principals together to work on problems, also bringing parents and other stakeholders together to work on problems. The then superintendent, Joe Joyner, who was an archetype superintendent I've learned so much from, he said we need a committee to address this head on and talk about over-testing. Long story short, because I see the 50 seconds ticking away, the committee recommended that to relieve testing pressure, the formatives be dropped. And so they were, and it was a huge disappointment because we had invested so much time and energy into those formative assessments. The teacher committees who had worked on them had spent so much time and effort, and the data was making a difference. I mean, you could see students were getting better. And so it was a casualty of the politics of testing. And so I was deeply disappointed that that didn't work out, and it was, in essence, a true failure.
Thank you.
Ms. Wright?
Explain what you've learned in your years of experiencing with budget. What budget practices have been most effective and why?
I think probably I inadvertently answered that with some of the other answers that I've given, so I won't try not to be too repetitive. But I think position control is critical. That's a detail. And I was a high school principal for 12 years. I knew every trick in the book. You know, you really, if you don't have good position control, you know, you might have 6 teachers that appear on your staffing sheet, but then if someone doesn't take a hard look at this from the district level, you might find that 5 of those teachers have full class assignments and 1 only has 2 periods. So what are they doing the rest of the day? Sometimes that person was a coach. Sometimes they were helping out administratively. Who knows what they were doing? The point is, if you have 4 or 5 of those positions in 15 schools, you're talking $700,000-800,000 of teachers that aren't teachers. You can't have that. So position control is critical. In addition to that, I think what I said earlier about setting an iron ring, a clear set of expectations with budget that is monitored and feedback is given regularly if it looks like you're going out of the circle is very critical. And that way, that principal has complete confidence in what they can do in an autonomous fashion within their school, but they absolutely know that there's controls in place, and if they deviate from that, they will get a phone call or they will be brought in to discuss why that happened, how it happened, should it be corrected. And what that ends up doing is it creates honesty. In other words, you know you can't sneak it through. And by the way, I did that. You know that you have to be honest. You know you have to be face forward and then discuss it. The other thing, and again, maybe I'm overemphasizing it, but I tend to think that we overfight over 15%. Every budget and finance discussion should begin with, you know, 87% of this or 85% is spent on staff. So let's acknowledge that and push that off the table. You know what we really have now. So what are our 3 priorities? Not 15, not 20, not flavor of the week, but what are the 3 things we're going to do? And by the way, let's not halfway do them. Let's make sure that when we start this, we're going to finish it. Education is littered with the corpses of good intentions and programs that were halfway implemented. Then when you didn't get the results, you ditched them. Well, you didn't get the results because you didn't follow through. You didn't implement it as directed. You decided it cost too much. You decided it was too much trouble. When I say you, I'm talking about us collectively. And so before they could have any chance of working, they were sabotaged. And then what happens? You have a new initiative, and everyone says, well, it's going to be just like the old one, because we've seen it too many times. So people with finance, you have to know what you can do, what the real limits are, prioritize those limits, and then stick to it and not deviate for any reason unless you see that it is not producing student performance. Return on investment has to be your mantra for anything that happens within a district, because your finances are too tight.
Mr. Cologne.
All right. What will teachers, organizations which you have worked with tell us about you? What will the support organizations tell us? What will the district and school administrators say?
I hope, tremendously hope, that if there's any teachers that remember me, they will remember me as a partner and an honest broker. My door was always open. I always listened to ideas. I was always open to acknowledging. I like to hire people who were smarter than me. I like to have teachers who were better teachers than I was. So I had a great deal of respect. And so I felt like I offered respect and I received respect, and we could communicate. So I hope teachers, if they spoke out about this, they would remember me as such. I did participate in negotiations in this district. I was principal of the year. I was on the committee. I worked pretty extensively with Andrew Spar. I'm sure you remember Andrew. And I always felt like that when I was at that table, there was the administrative side, there was the teacher side, and I was right there in the middle as a bridge. And I feel like I've had a capacity to do that my entire life, because my intentions have always been easy to figure out. I didn't have hidden agendas. I was working towards student achievement. I knew teachers were the key to that. So it was an easy formula for me. Now, that doesn't mean everybody liked me, and it doesn't mean that there wasn't conflict, and it didn't mean that I didn't have to say no to things. But I do believe that if you establish an atmosphere of trust, you listen first, then you discuss, and you don't go in with a predisposed disposition that this is going to be conflict-driven, then you can make progress. You can make realistic progress. So I think I have a good reputation in that regard. As a principal and an administrator in the district, and in the district, I just finished my interim stint in May, so I've had interim jobs before. I do believe that one of the reasons I was picked for some of the positions I've been in was my capacity to work with principals. Principals have to be the CFO of their school. They also have to be curriculum experts. They can't just manage budgets and make sure the fences are high. They have to be a curriculum expert. And so I believe that if you spoke to most current or past principals in this district who know me, they would feel that I was highly competent, that I was able to navigate and solve very difficult problems, and that we collaborated and cooperated in a rather unique and wonderful way.
Great, thank you.
All right, we have finished our 3 rounds of questioning. Thank you for adhering to the time limits so nicely. I know it's hard.
Me to,
I know it's
Carl.
hard. I know it's hard. Well, I'm trying to give you a little credit here, Tim. But you're going to have an opportunity to give a closing statement. And I thought before you did, if there were any questions that you had of me or the board, any questions about the process. this to be your time to ask.
Thank you. I don't believe I have any specific questions. I believe that the process has been handled very professionally. I was very impressed with the work of the FSBA in helping you with this and your reaction to it. I've been pleased and excited by the unified way that you've approached this and getting to this point in a very difficult situation. It speaks well of your leadership. I know that there would be some negotiation after the fact. I think you'll find me an easy negotiator. I'm an easy date, you know, when we get to the lawyers. So I don't, unless you have some question of mine, I can close. I would be comfortable closing rather quickly here.
That's fine. You may proceed to your closing statement.
Believe it or not, I did try to work in most of the salient points that I had left in my opening statement, so I won't lecture to you too much at this point. But I did want to emphasize that a few points. One is an interim. I am fully vested in the idea of the interim position. I've seen the value of it. I've served in several short-term and interim positions in the last few years, and I see how that is it's a very tricky place to be, because you have to move forward and be productive. At the same time, you have to always be conscious that you're trying to prepare a situation that's going to be the best situation possible for the permanent person that follows. I think I've had great success with that. I have a whole philosophy about how to do that, which we'll talk about at another time, I hope. But I also understand, and I fully accept the responsibility of the interim position, which I believe is primarily to give you a breathing space to where you don't have to be overly concerned about the status of the district, the progress within the district, while you focus on unifying behind hiring the ideal candidate for the future of the district. So my responsibility to you is to make sure what needs to get done gets done, to set the framework for even greater achievement, and at the same time give you peace of mind that you're not having to worry on a day-to-day basis about what's happening in the district while you focus on a search to find a permanent candidate, and this district certainly deserves the best. So I hope you do work with that in the way that you've described. Other than that, I think I would say to you as we end, if you do not feel like that I have the competency, just even from this 1 hour meeting, if you don't feel like I have the competency to do this task and all the facets of the task, and if you don't feel like that you can trust me starting right now, starting this minute, then you shouldn't hire me. If you are comfortable that I'm competent to the task and you feel I'm trustworthy, then I hope you will think and believe and hire me as the best fit for Volusia County at this time, at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I want to make sure that you understand that we have one more candidate to interview. Then we're going to take a lunch break, if you will. We'll come back at 2 o'clock and in a formal board session. We'll talk about all the candidates at that time, but the expectation we have is to select that person today, and then all of the candidates will be notified one way or the other. Also, the expectation we have is for the individual that we appoint, that individual would be able to spend some time with our current superintendent during that last week of June. Of course, those hours and days would be worked out when we would negotiate the contract with the new person. And then when the new fiscal year starts, you're it, and that's it. So we, once again, thank you so much. Thank you also for all the years that you worked with the Volusia County Schools. I look back at your time at Spruce Creek High School, and it was Those were good days,
Thank
good times. And again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we are in another break for about 15 minutes.
I know he has helped hundreds of students. He has helped hundreds of students get scholarships, and he has worked to change lives. And that is why he is Volusia County's Teacher of the Year.
It's a humbling thing to be chosen as Teacher of the Year. I do get to share, what we're doing here at Taylor in the AVID program and at Taylor in general, and speak for publication. I do get to do that, and I really want to, but the reason that I'm being honored for this is because my students did what I asked them to. That's really all it was. And, I see some of my seniors here in the front, and I really haven't thought too much about this because they are working on scholarships this week and all those sorts of things. So I really want to, all this accolade, whether you believe I'm saying it or not, I mean it. This is about you guys because you guys put me here. So thank you.
Teachers, they have a very difficult job, and sometimes, they don't get recognized enough. It's something we can do to give back, to the teacher and to the schools for what they do. The tournaments, Bishikia and Diamond Motors are to be here presenting this car for the teacher of the year to drive for the year.
Every year we do this clinical supply donation to 23 schools, and our team that works in our materials unit is so fabulous about helping us make sure that it gets distributed in the cars. We're happy to help the schools in our community provide clinical help to our students.
It means the world to us because we get an opportunity to help with boo-boos that happen during the day, and it just makes it a lot more easier for our nurse, and so we can care for our students.
Hi, my name is Adrian Avram. I went to Blue Lake Elementary, DeLand Middle, and Mainland High School. I was a very shy kid, so Blue Lake really helped me break out of that shell and be more vocal and interact better with people. They had the Academy of Multimedia Technology, where they did graphics design and networking, and that's what really pulled me into my career choice now. My teachers would always tell me that anything is possible as long as I put my mind to it and didn't give up. I could achieve it. I just had to keep working towards it and not giving up when things got hard. I have a 4-year-old son who is currently going to Indian River, and I have a 2-year-old daughter who will be following shortly behind him. I can think of no better place for my kids to receive a superior 21st century education.
I'm Chandler Powers. I'm a student at University High School, and I'm also a young entrepreneur. The beginning process is the most important process, which is planning what you're going to do onto the canvas, and from there it helps you understand what you're going to do. These 9/11 cleats, they're brave. The reason is what I used. The brave stands for those who fought for us and helped us through these tragedy times, and the reason is the reason we are alive today.
Academics are very important to him, and the amazing thing is I never even have to tell him to do homework. It just makes me proud that he knows the priorities in life and he has no problem getting them all done. He went to a leadership and vision program at Yale University where he learned all about business entrepreneurship.
I felt that it was a great opportunity to meet new people and get to know what the meaning is behind business and getting ideas out there and what the process is into getting into that. My number one takeaway was marketing it and getting it out there for those, and really the main way to start is what is really needed in the world. Just seeing my work out there just makes me happy, and just see how good of a job I've done or how I feel I've done wants me to keep going and striving to be the best I can be.
So let's give him a warm welcome and a good round of applause. I'm going to race the Advent Health car this weekend in the class race at Daytona. My nerves are a little high of the questions that you might ask, because I know the questions that my kids ask in this situation.
What type of foods do you eat leading up to the race?
It's super hot inside the car, and the races are really long. So how you fuel your body can make a huge difference in the outcome of your race and how you feel during the race. Hydration is one of the hardest things for us in getting enough water in. I drink water basically 100% of my day.
At that age, you're so young that if you can learn the proper way to eat and the proper way to exercise, and then you live your life that way, it's much easier than if it gets out of control and 10 years down the line, then you're trying to get it back. So if you can teach someone at this age the importance of nutrition and exercise, it just makes your life so much easier.
Students are coming up saying, is there a NASCAR driver coming? Is someone coming today? Like, who is it? Who's coming? So even students that aren't into NASCAR are saying things like, I'm not into driving, but I'm so excited. Like, I see that over and over again, and it's really just hysterical, because I feel so fortunate and overjoyed to have this opportunity.
My name's Taylor Dugay. I work at the United Way at Volusia Flagler Counties as our impact and marketing strategist. I think the most influential teacher I ever had was Mrs. Linda Cuthbert, who now of course sits on our school board. She really helped me figure out what I wanted to do in life, especially in politics and caring for our community. She told me one time, if you don't like something, change it. And that really set me on my path to where I am today, and why I'm still in Volusia County and why I work in nonprofit.
Oh man, I think I was pretty nerdy. It's usually what runs through my mind when I look back at my high school stuff.
I got a very high quality education through Volusia County schools. I know that the reason I can stand in front of a group of 500 people and speak clearly and get my point across is because of the skills I started developing in 6th grade with my speech class. My path in life that I've developed is because of those relationships I made through Volusia County schools and that connection I built with our community. So Volusia County schools really did prepare me for my job now and for my career, which involves a lot of writing, communication, critical thinking, public speaking, interpersonal skills that really I developed through Volusia County schools.
right, we are back in session, and once again, we are interviewing candidates for our interim superintendent position, which will be starting July 1st. We have interviewed Tim Hoof this morning, was our first candidate, and Tim Egner was our second candidate. And with us right now is Pam Stewart. And that was my cue. I just something here. Hold it. Let me shut off all phones. Excuse me, Pam. Once again, I want to say welcome. Thank you for coming on such short notice. I know you just found out yesterday, and we greatly appreciate you changing whatever plans you had for today and come down to Volusia County. We are have allocated about 1 hour for these interviews, and we'll be going around the horn and asking you questions. So let me just introduce some of the folks here before we get started with questions. First, Ms. Connie Spire is our agency clerk for our school board. Ms. Jamie Haynes, she represents District 1. Ms. Ida Wright is our vice chair, and she represents District 2. Ms. Linda Cuthbert is a school board member representing District 3. Mr. Ruben Colon represents District 5. Ted Doran, who looks wonderful right now, he is our school board attorney. And my name is Carl Persis, and I'm serving as the chair, and I represent District 4. Now, we have about 3 rounds of questions, but before we get into questions, we'd like to give you the opportunity to have an opening statement, and you may take up to 3 minutes.
Okay. And I assume that I am timed.
Yes,
I'll
yes.
know that
You'll see
somehow.
a little timer will pop up here. There you go. There we go.
All right, very
Okay.
good. It's really a pleasure to be here today and get to see you again and others again. And I will say that this board cannot go wrong. The 3 candidates you selected are awesome candidates. I know the other 2 gentlemen, have known them for years and know their capabilities, and I think any decision you make is going to be the right one. So that's certainly important to know. I had every intention of riding off into the sunset and being retired. And although I was nervous about it, I adjusted very, very well and have stayed busy. Everyone says you do, but I have stayed busy. And in early March, I got a call from an external operator asking me if I would be interested in doing turnaround work. And turnaround work is what I believe is so very important. It's one of the passions that I have. I turned around 2 schools as principal, one from an F to a C in 1 year and one from a C to an A in 1 year. And it truly became a driving force for me. So I worked hard in Marion County in that kind of work. I did that work in St. Johns County, though you might not think it. There is low performance in St. Johns County and at the department. And in the department, we moved the early 200s. We were 48th or 49th in the country. And as I retired, we had moved up to 4th in the country. And so, because it's something that I love to do, I agreed to work with 2 low-performing schools. We've started the work in anticipation of the 1920 school year. And that work really made me realize that I'm not done yet. I love what I do, and I have gotten in that work. I've gotten to work with teachers and with leaders at the school level and at the district level. I went to their job fair, got to reconnect with a lot of teachers that I know, and that's where the real work happens, and I know that. Our students are in our teachers' hands, and we certainly have to provide them with whatever is necessary in order to be successful. So when I think about that kind of turnaround work, I think that I am pretty good at leading large organizations through transition. I've served as interim commissioner twice and managed with a large organization to calm the waters and steady the ship. And I think that I have just what is needed to be successful in Volusia and help Volusia reach the next level. And I see that I'm out.
I know, it goes fast, doesn't it?
It does.
All right, well, we're going to begin our questioning. And our first question, I'll ask the first question, and that is, what do you believe would be the top 3 issues facing Volusia County schools, and how would you go about addressing those, and the timeline that you would use?
Do I have the same amount of time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think the first issue is that in your strategic plan, you say that Volusia County will be an A district. I didn't know that when I put that in my cover letter, but in my exploration later, I found that to be the case. And yet you haven't achieved that yet. And I think that focusing on the students that need our attention the most is the way we're going to get there. For too long, we have just said that we want all students to learn, and averages hide where there are issues. And I think being very deliberate in working on those students who for a long time have been left behind is the way to improve schools in Volusia County so that there are no C schools, or nothing below a C school in Volusia County, and that all schools improve. I notice that there's been some stagnation or even some decline, and only a few places where there's been an improvement. And I think that every school in Volusia County can improve, and I think there are several ways to be able to accomplish that. As I mentioned, we've got to focus on students. We've got to make sure that the teachers are equipped with all of the resources that they need, because we know that they're the most important factor. And given the right set of resources, I mean the support that they need through the leader, and with just that sounds, having the materials that they need in order to be successful. I think that's important. I think the second thing to focus on, and this would be true no matter where we were, and that is school safety. And I've had my eyes opened in serving on the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Commission. And I believe that I have the ability to tap into those resources that would be important. And I think that there are things that I've shared with superintendents. There are things that don't cost you anything that you can do today to ensure students remain safe. So that would be another priority that I would have. And along the lines of student achievement would be reaching out to the community and bringing in the community and helping them to feel a part of this process of improving our schools. When they're on board, I think that we can accomplish a great deal. And so it would be a community focus, a school safety focus, and a student success focus.
Thank you. Our next question will be from Ms. Cuthbert.
Good morning.
Good morning.
What strategies would you use to raise the academic achievement of our lowest quartile students? Please describe an area in which you've been successful and in closing this achievement gap.
So it's kind of a two-part question. So one of the things that I talked about was being very deliberate and focusing on those students that have very often been left behind. And so working with students that we see need the assistance. We've had lots of places where it's been successful. I've done that successfully. One of the things that we did, one of the strategies we used was an everyday practice kind of situation, where every day I came on the morning announcements and talked about what standard we were going to focus on. And it became part of the conversation wherever we went. I think being very, very careful and deliberate about the work with students that are in the bottom quartile. So I think one of the ways to do that is to focus on student absenteeism and how do we overcome that. One that might be kind of surprising is teacher absenteeism. If we believe, and I believe, that the teacher is the most important factor, then they have to be there in the classroom. And so focusing on teacher absenteeism. Another area is student discipline. I don't think you can make an edict that no students will be suspended. But I think you have to provide teachers with the appropriate tools to help students be successful and want to be successful. And some of those strategies that I've seen that are successful is a way for every teacher to make a connection with every single student. There's also some really good work around questioning techniques. So teachers use questioning even with their lowest quartile students, even with their students that haven't previously demonstrated that they can do it. By using appropriate questioning techniques and even coming back to students that can't give the answer, just to have them reiterate what the correct answer was, can help bring all students along and help them actually hear those higher level questions and be able to respond to them. So I think when we make connections with students, their behavior improves. And when we bring them into the actual learning conversation in the classroom, I've seen that be very successful and believe that that's really important.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will be from Ms. Wright.
Good morning.
Good morning.
What is your vision for financial reporting, transparency, and maintaining public trust of financial affairs of Volusia County?
I think it's not just a Volusia County issue, and I think that that is something that is extremely important, that everyone has a trust, whether it is the community having trust that their money, their taxpayer dollars, are being used appropriately, or it is that teacher in the classroom. Because I hear teachers over and over again talk about what they don't have. And they feel often that there is money spent in other areas that could be spent directly into the classroom. So I think, and what I have seen be very successful, is an initial budget report and a way of building a budget that everyone has input and bringing it before the board. And then at every single board meeting, there is a presentation. Even if the board already knows all of that, having it out in the open and having the public be able to see it. In addition to that, making sure that anytime anyone asks a financial question, there's an answer for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will be from Mr. Colon.
All right. Describe what you believe to be the ideal working relationship with a school board. How is this ideal relationship achieved and maintained? And should you have an adversarial situation with a school board member, how would you resolve it?
If I leave any part of that out, will you bring me back to
Absolutely.
it? Okay, thank you. You know, it sounds trite, but communication is the key. And so having served on boards and having reported to a board, I know the importance of that communication on both sides. And I think that that communication is essential. So one of the ways to do that is to have regular conversations with board members, where it's not, I'm going to communicate with board members, but it's very thought out, laser focused. There's a set time each week that the superintendent communicates with each board member individually, and it provides an opportunity to be able to bring them up to speed and let them know what's happening, and then the opportunity to ask questions. If there's an adversarial setting, that's the same key. It's communication. It's being very open about what that adversarial condition is and what do we find in common to be able to move forward. Because clearly the superintendent and the board are not always going to agree, but they have to be united and working together in the same goal. And so I think communication is the key. And it's not just lip service to we're going to communicate, but actually having communication and checking for whether or not that communication is the right communication as you go along.
Great, thank you.
Okay, our next question will be from Ms. Haynes.
Good morning.
Morning.
Briefly describe your leadership style and in more detail specifically address your approach to holding staff accountable?
So I think that leadership is one of my strongest traits. I believe in the importance of building a strong leadership team, and again, communicating with that leadership team. It's communication in every direction. But I think, again, just like when there's an adversarial situation, having a conversation directly with that person. There's a book called Caring Enough to Confront. You don't give that person the opportunity to get better if you don't communicate with that individual. So you have denied them their right to get better and to respond to whatever it is that the concern is. Having, again, I've done this always, weekly meetings where it's a two-way meeting. It's not just a top-down communication, but it is a sharing back and forth where we're all going to be working together on whatever the issue is. And that communication is key. When you sit in that top spot, every word you say is picked apart. And so it's important to choose those words carefully. And then I think the other important thing is that those that you're leading need to see you doing. It's got to be more than just talk. It's got to be walking the walk. And I think that's something that is crucial. When staff evaluations need to happen frequently, you don't do something once a year, just like you don't with your students in your classroom. You don't wait till the end to know whether or not they know the material and they can do. There are checks along the way, and there are responses to that. So a teacher uses that every single day, and so does and should a leader be using that every day.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we are moving on to round two, and our first question will come from.
Give me 2 seconds. Let me finish writing this.
Our first question will come from Ms. Wright.
Good morning again.
Good morning.
Volusia's budget is impacted by student cost calculations compared to some other districts that receive higher per student funding. How do you ensure appropriate resources be allocated within Volusia County?
Excellent question. I thought you were going to ask me, how do you get more per student? That was going to be a tougher question. Again, going back to Ms. Cuthbert's question, I think that you've got to ensure that the students that need the most receive the most. And one of the things that I found in my work is that it's not necessarily the amount of the dollars, but being very careful and deliberate about what those dollars are spent on. So one of the things that I would say when I was in St. Johns County and the bottom fell out of the economy, it made us take a very hard look at where we were spending money, and we had to cut back in certain areas. And we got much better at determining those things that were very important to spend our money on. And I think we have to do that. You can't just say that every single classroom gets the exact amount of money. You have to be very deliberate and look at where those needs are, which means you have to know where those needs are and provide those appropriately.
Thank you.
Okay, our next question will come from Mr. Colon.
How important is it, and what specific roles have you played personally in dealing with the legislature, Department of Education, Department of Justice, or any other regulatory agency?
Well, I have to admit that it wasn't the favorite part of my job to work with the legislature. I can do it. I did it. I feel as though I was pretty effective at that and knew my role and would make sure that I met with the appropriate legislators and encouraged those in the districts, because when I had been in a district, I didn't realize the importance of it. And once I got to the state level, I realize that it can have such a strong impact, and it's important to be a voice, and that voices are heard and voices are listened to. So I think that working individually with legislators and speaking in front of committees, I think that's the other thing that would be important with the legislature. As far as the Department of Education, I do know my way around there, and I would have a way of communicating with the department, and I still have a great relationship with those at the department. It's what I miss the most, is the people there. And Department of Justice, I'm assuming that in Florida you mean like DJJ?
No.
Like Department of Justice.
Yes. Investigations, complaints.
So we had our own investigative department in the department, both an inspector general, but more importantly, investigating educator misconduct, and it's key. And I think that my role was that I allowed them to do their job and didn't interfere with the work that they did, because in order to continue to be successful, you have to be open to any sort of investigation, whether it's financial or procedural or behavior. You have to be open to any kind of an investigation.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Our next question will come from Ms. Haynes.
What are the most important factors to consider in the summer before a new school year begins, and how do you address them?
Right, and that's where we are, is in the summer. And there are several things that I think people have the concept that summer is just the easy time in a school district. And in fact, especially at the district level, that's when you're gearing up, that's when you're doing so much. And I think that you've got to make sure that your transportation is ready and up and running, and you know the way that students are going to be brought to school, and you can't teach them if they're not there. And many things happen that first week of school with buses, so being sure that your transportation is ready and going. It's the time for facilities to get anything that they need that can be done in the summer, done in the summer. So making sure that facilities are up and running. You've got to make sure that you've got all the personnel hired and in place and ready to go. You've got to be ready, as I mentioned before, for school safety. So you've got to not only make sure that facilities are prepared and in good condition, but you've also got to be ready for school safety. One of the other things you have to be ready for are the hurricanes. We are in the season. We know that it really gets crucial in August and September. That's when we really have them, but we've got to be ready. And I think that there are some things, when I was at the state level and saw hurricanes coming in, I think we had some wake-up calls in the last couple of years. And I think making sure that our relationships are what they need to be and where they need to be with our emergency management centers. And we know where all the facilities will be. And one of the things that came up that was crucial in the last couple was making sure that everyone knew pet-friendly shelters and that those shelters were prepared to receive animals. You've got to make sure that you've got your principals in place and the principals are in the right place. A principal can be very successful in one school and maybe not in another school. So getting everything in order so that come the 1st of August, you're ready for school to open without any hitches whatsoever.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll ask you the next question, and that is, what do you see as Volusia County School District's most unique or valuable or undeveloped feature that you would want to capitalize on, and how would you go about utilizing it?
That's an excellent question. And I think one of the unique factors that you have, obviously, is the beach. Lots of Florida districts have the beach, but I think using that to your advantage when we're thinking of attracting people to come into Volusia County. But you also have the distinction of probably more remote areas in the county than many other of your beach communities. And so I think that brings something unique, that people can be near the beach, but they can also be in whatever kind of community they might choose to be in. I think that's something that can be used to Volusia's advantage. I really believe that Volusia County has been underachieving. And I think that Volusia County can do better than it has been doing. When I look across the state, but also just across the schools within Volusia County, similar demographics have grades all over the map. And grades aren't just grades. It's what I used to say. You know, we were 4th in the country, and that's wonderful. And I would go to national conventions, and everybody would want to know, what are you doing in Florida? But for me, what that means is that represents more students than ever before achieving what we previously didn't think was even possible. And that's what I see when I look across Volusia County. There are pockets of excellence, and there are pockets where we aren't doing as well as we could do in Volusia County. And I think that's an opportunity that I believe Volusia County can and really should improve because of what it means for the students in Volusia County, what it means as a morale booster for every teacher and leader in Volusia County, and also for economic development in Volusia County. That's what people want to know. And I think if we're doing it in places, and I know we are in Volusia and throughout the state, then being able to replicate that in every single school in Volusia County. Not just a few, but every school in Volusia County.
Okay, thank you. And our next question will be from Ms. Cuthbert.
Hi. Hi. One of our ongoing goals is always to increase the enrollment of traditionally underrepresented student governments, of student groups, in higher level courses like IB or AP. What success have you had in achieving this goal, and what was done, and what were some of the results?
Well, I think I did a good job of that when I was a high school principal, and I was the principal of a high school that had the IB program, and I actually sit on the Florida League of IB Schools, and so we have lots of AP and IB, and certainly ACE and dual enrollment. And one of the things that I was very proud of was the fact that some of my students from the school I was principal of that had been an F and moved to a C eventually ended up as students of mine in the IB program at Vanguard High School. So doing some things to attract conversations with teachers, with students. I think that one-on-one conversation from a teacher to a student stays with that student forever. Whichever the conversation is, whether it's positive or negative, that stays with that student. And so if teachers can and will, they can be our strongest ally in bringing along traditionally underrepresented students. What we did at the state level was, I think, we can track that our participation in AP greatly increased when we included that into the school grade. And what that did was it allowed people to see that when we are more inclusive, students are actually performing. So we're number 1 in the country in participation in AP, and 3rd in the country with performance. I'm extremely proud of that while we included more, teachers then could see that students really can do this work. And we've really narrowed that gap in Florida. In each one of those higher level courses in AP, in IB, in ACE, and in dual enrollment. And once students see that they can do that work, they feel more confident and they will go on. And I do feel that the encouragement and the individual conversations that teachers have with students is the key.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're doing great. We're on round 3 here, so
Right.
hang in there.
I feel like I'm talking so fast.
I know. All right, our first question here in round 3 will come from Ms. Haynes.
If you could point to one program or process that you have implemented that best represents your goals as an educator, what would you share?
That one is easy. So when Governor Scott was counting down his second term, he called all of us together at the 1,000-day count. And so I began on my phone an app that is days until, and counted down how much longer I had. And there were 4 of us from my leadership team, and we were at a conference, and that evening, sitting around dinner table, one of my leadership staff asked me, what do you want your legacy to be? And I said, I don't think of myself as having a legacy. I'm just me. And so my chief of staff, who is extremely wise, said to me, if you could wave a magic wand and have anything happen, what would it be? And instantly what came to mind was I would close the gap between white and African American students. And that came about from work that I had done at Reddick Collier Elementary, and having that school. I was there the first year that grades came out, and we were an F. And we had been critically low performing prior to that. And there were 5 categories, and that was the lowest category, so we should have known what our grade would be. But that was a slap in the face. And that was something that was unacceptable. And so what we did was we dug in, and we did things we didn't know how to do, we didn't know about, and we got at it, and we moved from an F to a C. And what that did to me, for me, was made me realize that for too long, we had held that misconception that if students come from poverty, they cannot achieve. And we saw, through being forced to see, that can change. And so it really became my life quest. And so we began work, and we did it in an optional way. Districts could choose to participate, and we had good participation, and that participation got better. And we began to focus on those things. I think that if I had had another 2 years, we would have really gotten there, because Florida was making those inroads. We were 4th in the country, and it's something I'm very proud of. However, what I was more proud of was closing the gap better than any other state in the nation, and I believe in that work.
Thank you.
Great. Well, let's talk about the superintendent job. And what do you think is the most important thing a superintendent does, and why do you think so?
Well, I think they're the chief executive officer, and I think it is their job to lead the district. I think it's the job of the superintendent to work with the school board in determining what those goals are, and then it's their job to implement and lead the district to that success. I know I don't think I know any administrators in Volusia County, but I know teachers in Volusia County. And some of them that I am very close to. And I think they represent the caliber of teachers in Volusia County who want to be led. And I think that with great, strong leadership, and that's what I see the superintendent as, the leader of the school district, and that's everyone in the school district. You don't just lead your inner group, you lead everyone in the district. So that would mean knowing teachers, and certainly them being able to articulate what is our goal in Volusia County? What are we working toward? And how do we work toward that? I think that's something that is very, very important for the superintendent to be able to do, to operationally, if you will, carry out what has been established as the goal of the school board. I think it's, in order to be successful at that, I've already talked about communication, and I think that is important, but I also believe communication not just in those areas I've talked about. It's important to have a student advisory council, to have a teacher advisory council, to have a parent advisory council. I think those, to talk about the transparency with the finances and budget, I think having groups of individuals who can ask any question they want of the superintendent is something that is extremely important for that superintendent in leading the district to be able to accomplish. In many ways, it is exactly like my role at the department. I had a board. It was their responsibility to establish the policy and the goals for the work in Florida, and then it was my job to lead and make sure that that was carried out. And so it's very, very similar in nature.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, Ms. Cuthbert.
Thanks. One more time. Thank you. But tell us about an academic or an instructional program or project that you were involved in that might have failed. Why did it fail, and what did you do about it?
I'm struggling thinking of one that failed. It wasn't really an instructional program, and it is my going way back to the point that I was an assistant principal at a high school. It was my first year as an assistant principal and first year at this school. And I decided that we were going to change the way we did locker distribution, and it was pretty much an epic fail. And we continued on, and we finished the distribution of lockers, but we did change it for the next day, or for the next year. It did provide us with some insight into not returning to the previous way, but not doing it the way we had done it, and finding somewhere in between to be able to do that. I think if I were going to say something else more recent that was a failure, I don't see really as a failure, but could have gone better. And that is when we changed to new standards, someone from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation asked me how I knew that the standards were being taught in every classroom. And I had recently been in St. John's, and we had changed standards. We had done that work. And one of the ways we knew was because our K through 2 report card was standards based. So we had changed the report card. So the standards were certainly reflective in K1 and 2, which at that time was all there was. So we decided that we should do some training at the state level and got some money and did that. It was a minuscule drop in the bucket. And so for that reason, I would term it a failure. It wasn't as good as it could have been. And we continued to do that over time and make sure that individuals knew the standards. But I think that very often teachers, rightly so, are handed a textbook, and they believe that if they pick up that textbook and start at the beginning and go as far as they can through that book, they have covered what needed to be covered. And I think that's a failing of our textbook companies. And I think it's important that teachers know the standards and know them to the level of rigor that is important in that particular grade level. And I don't know that we got there. And I think that's something important that still has work to do and needs to do. When I was in St. John's, we were developing end of course tests as the state was starting to do that, and we did that with Algebra 1. And we had Algebra 1 teachers who said, "That's a standard? I didn't know that was a standard." And that was clearly for that teacher, in any case, the first time they had actually looked at the standards. So that could have been better.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will be from Ms. Wright.
Explain what you've learned in your years with budgeting, experiences with budgeting. What budget practice have been most effective and why?
Either you drew a particular straw or budget is really important to you.
It is.
That's my background.
Oh, that's right. Business administration, and you even teach that. So I was responsible for an almost $20 billion budget and budget development. And the way we had to do that budget was we had the previous year's budget. We knew we were going to have some parameters within which to work, much like a school district is going to have certain parameters within which they must work. And then we actually individually took input from each state board member. We have the same sunshine laws, so we had to do that individually and then come together collectively with all of that input. We also had input from each department or each division within the department. So comparing that to a school district, that would be each department within the school district as well as each school within the district to get what the priorities are. And then you have to determine the best way to accomplish all of that. It is not an easy task. And you do have a finite amount of money and you have to prioritize. But then you have to bring for approval a balanced budget that accomplishes as much of the priorities and a ranking of the importance of those priorities to the board with a full explanation of why those things are important and looking at whatever priorities had to fall off and why they have to fall off and what might we want to switch out in place of. But at the end of the day, you've got to meet all of the necessary requirements and try to make everyone happy, almost an impossible task. And so you have to do the best that you can with those dollars.
Thank you.
And ultimately, as with our situation, it is the board that approves that budget.
Thank you. Our next question will come from Mr. Colon.
All right. What will teachers' organizations with which you have worked with tell us about you? What will support organizations tell us about you? What will the district and school administrator say?
I would welcome you to talk to any of those groups. I think that they would probably needing to look at different groups differently, but overall, I think what you'd find is that people would say that I'm extremely hardworking, that I expect that of myself. I never give anything less than 110%. I know I'm not the only person that's ever done this, but I went through chemo and surgery and radiation and worked every single day through every bit of that. And I'm pretty convinced it's what keeps me motivated, and so hard work is important. I think that every group would tell you that I will listen and that I will always, even if I don't agree and don't do what I'm asked of that particular interest group, I always communicate what I'm doing and why I'm doing that. I think there may have even been some newspaper articles after I left that reflected back on me perhaps differently than they might have while I was there. But I think that because I believe in the importance of listening and communicating and always being responsive and accountable, I think that has served me very well and has been why no matter the level of individual, appreciated the opportunity to work with me, and that's the way I always presented it, was that individuals were working with me Individuals didn't work for me, they worked with me. And I'll say here that the most difficult job in a school system, in education period, is the bus driver. You have a very large machine and you have your back to 50 to 80 students and have to safely get them to and from school, and it's a difficult job. And I always provided honor to those individuals who served in whatever capacity they served in.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, we thank you. So we have completed our round of questioning, so you can exhale now, it's good. And I just wanted to give you a few minutes. Of course, you're going to have some time to give a closing statement. But at this point, do you have any questions for the board? Anything that we may be able to answer?
Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, I am at the point in my life that I don't have to work. Emotionally, I think I have to work, but I don't have to financially work. And so in order to, should I be offered a position, in order to be sure I'm making the right decision, it would be important that it was the right fit. And so I would really want to know from the board, maybe individually, maybe you speak collectively, what's the goal of the board? And I mean that sort of twofold. I mentioned earlier that I've served as interim commissioner twice, and I felt it was my role to serve in that capacity as though I were going to be there for the consequences of whatever decision I was making. That it wasn't just that I do a good job while I was there, but that I do that mindfully. And so I think I did that 3 times, including the handoff as I retired. But I knew what the goal was. And I've read the strategic plan, but it looks like it's from 2015. That may not even represent what the thoughts of each of these board members would be today. And so perhaps that is the goal, perhaps it does accurately state, but if you were able to think of what you want long-term for Volusia and what you want short-term for Volusia, that would be important to me.
Sure. Well, first of all, we understand that you would be here for a short time. So we couldn't expect whomever the person is to achieve our long-term goals in a 5-month period.
But you have to have the long-term goal in mind.
But we do have those goals in mind. But as far as the goals we would want for the interim superintendent, we are thinking short-term goals. I mean, we're thinking practically, and practically means the start of school. That everything is in place for the start of school, because as we all say it around this table, how everyone thinks that there isn't anything going on in the summer. We all know that from the district side of things, this is the busiest time. So, as has been mentioned often, having the staff hired, are all the schools fully staffed? Not with long-term substitutes, but certified teachers. Are the mechanisms in place right now? So that would be probably one of the first things we'd want our interim superintendent to do, to be with human resources and to finding out where we are we on the right time frame to get all these people hired in the short time that we have left. It'll only be from July 1st.
Correct.
5 weeks. Basically. So, that would be first and foremost. Of course, the operational side of things, as you mentioned, in the answer to the question, you mentioned transportation, and you mentioned facilities, and of course, all those things, you would have to be sure that all those things are in place and our schools are safe and operational, and we are ready to go, all the communication that needs to be ensured that it's out there to the parents, so everybody knows about our new school schedules that we're having take place in August. So there's a lot of communication that we want to ensure is taking place. So again, that we have that nice start to our school year. We want to make sure that our interim superintendent has a good relationship with our senior staff. These are the people right now who are wondering, you know, who is the next superintendent going to be? How is it going to affect me? Will I still have my job? I mean, these are real personal issues. You know, is this person going to come in and start changing everything? And if so, when and how will I, you know, so those are just personal issues that the new superintendent needs to be cognizant of. We also want to, we feel we have a good relationship with our teachers union and all of the unions, and we want that relationship to get even better. And so we don't want to, during this interim time, if you will, to take a step backwards on that. We want all of our teachers to know that how much we value them and appreciate them and want to support them. We have purchased new instructional programs in the area of math and reading. So those are going to be rolled out in the fall. So that's another huge undertaking. So the interim superintendent would be reporting to this board and letting us know that, yes, all the trainings are in place, all the materials are here, the teachers are going to have what they need. So many things are happening in this month of August. You know, this month of August coming up, and so all of that work behind the scenes, you know, needs to take place in July, and that's when the new interim superintendent is going to be here. So it will be an extremely busy month. It'd be extremely busy month just for the superintendent who is here anyway, but for a new person to come on board, to get to know the people and to figure out what they do and how they do it, and then to also be checking on to make sure everything is done. I would say it's you know, those are the things that are first and foremost on us right now, because as we all know, everything is fine as long as things are going well. But it's when things are not going well, that's when we'll each get the calls about this didn't happen and that didn't happen, that didn't happen. And so we do not have any authority over that operational side of things. So we are putting our faith and trust in our interim superintendent to make sure that some of those things happen. Now that's just from me. I'm sure we have other board members, and we do have a little bit of time. Board members, if you'd like to comment, Ms. Cuthbert, or on any of this, or anyone else, and then we'll give you time to give a closing statement, okay? Yeah.
I'm very much interested in the morale and the positiveness of our faculty, our students returning. We still have school dress code uniform issue. We have 2 computer systems being implemented. There's a lot of new stuff coming in this year that is unique in all areas. It's almost, we have to be very much aware of all that must be accomplished, the trainings that are going on, that we need to be positive. Yes, this too shall pass. It will be successful, and it'll be for the betterment of our students. So I'm very much concerned about things working out well, and that people, instead of think, it's not going to work anyway, but it will, and it needs to start with us, that this is a positive school district. We can achieve. We are only 5 points away from an A. We've had some great results already. We have fantastic staff. And it's important for you to realize we have a lot of people who are involved. A lot of people are listening right now. We have the president of our teachers union sitting behind you, very much concerned about what is happening here today. So we want our relationships to be positive and forward and progressive. So thank you.
And if I may, when you mentioned that senior staff are all concerned, and you know, that was certainly what I faced as interim commissioner. And they didn't know what was going to happen. And my thought at that time was that I don't know that we all recognize how much it does affect the classroom teacher as well. And they feel that, and they feel that uncertainty, and they don't know what's going to happen. And I think, you know, that's important. That was my background. I have a daughter-in-law and a daughter and a sister that are all classroom teachers. And when I was in Marion County, I served on the collective bargaining team at the request of the teachers union when I was a principal. Because, going to your question, I think they saw me as fair and would always listen to both sides. And I completely agree with you that I think they feel a great deal of uncertainty and unrest.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, and I don't want to leave out the principals too.
And the
they feel
principals,
that.
absolutely.
They feel that too. Principals are people too, and
That's
they
right.
and they have their feelings as well.
I know that feeling well.
So I know you did, because you were in elementary and a high school
That's
principal.
right. Never
correct?
middle school.
Right. Well, why don't we now just go right into your closing statement, and
Great.
you may begin.
So I think I have every single bit of the skills that would be necessary in order to see Volusia through this transition. I don't think it's an easy time, and I don't know the time of year that might be an easy time to go through this. And in some ways, this is the ideal time. But I think I have those skills that are necessary, a strong background, a strong support system, a strong resource base that I can go to. And I think I could serve Volusia County very well and have a strong interest in doing so. But as I started with, I don't think you can go wrong. So thank you for the opportunity, and good luck to Volusia County. Good luck to all of you, no matter what happens. I wish you the very best and hope things go very well for you in Volusia.
Well, thank you so much. I will let you know that we are going to have we're going to break for lunch, and then we're going to be coming back at 2 o'clock for a school board meeting. We'll discuss all three candidates, but by the end of the day today, we are going to make a selection, and all of the candidates will be notified by telephone, one way or the other. But again, on behalf of the whole board, thank you so much. Thank you for your service as our commissioner for so long, and filling in twice and then getting the full-time job and hanging in there.
Longest serving in the modern history.
Longest serving, and you, if I recall, came in after there was a lot of turnover.
There was a lot of
I remember it was like commissioner for the week almost up there. It seemed like, but anyway, thank you for providing that stability for the Florida Department of Education.
I'm not sure how it served me to be the one standing between lunch, but good that you're going to eat before you make a decision.
Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Okay, and we are adjourned, and we'll be coming back at 2 p.m.